Da, 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 da. All right.
He's flying. He's got a cape.
There we go. Yeah, we're here. That is on me. That is on me, chat. I apologize, friends.
Well, I hope you're ready to explain to the good people in chat why you're so gay.
Well, it's Pride Month, so I thought I'd show a little bit of love to our homosexual brothers and sisters in the chat here by showing up nearly 20 minutes late. That's about all I got.
Well, better late than never, I suppose. Hello, everyone in chat. Thanks for your patience. I hope you're all having a fine Sunday. Hope you're just living your best life. Oh, he was cracking open a beer. Look at that.
Yeah, I think
Well,
I think after the shit storm that this computer put me through, I've earned it. All right, we're gonna go. And after watching this movie, I've earned it. This movie has challenged a lot of my conventions and beliefs regarding film.
yeah.
It was a huge exploration. You might hear a phrase uttered by me this fine Sunday that I never personally believed that I would say, not even once in my life. And that phrase is to give Zack Snyder credit.
Hey, look at that. Chat's on screen, but you can't read it because I picked a bad background. Look at that. What a time to be alive.
You
I suppose
fuck.
we could. Yeah, we could. I didn't think about that. That's all right. We could probably just jump into the other background so people can actually see their finely crafted words on screen. Yeah, I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but I'm gonna have to give Zack Snyder a tiny little bit of credit as well. But yeah, today we're gonna talk about Superman. We're gonna talk about
1978
Superman
Superman,
broadly,
yes.
but also mostly focusing on the 1978 Richard Donner Superman film, also sometimes referred to as Superman the movie. I don't actually know which one is the official title. On IMDb, it's just listed as Superman, but a lot of things say Superman the
Funnily
movie.
enough, the behind the scenes drama for this movie is absolutely fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff that went on in the production of this film that I'm very excited to talk about.
Yeah.
Superman the movie, Superman 1978, Superman Part 1, if you were to consider the script, written by Mario Puzo of Godfather fame, both novel and film, which is I was pretty intrigued that that guy would be the one they went with for a Superman film. Turns out only for half. Only for the first half did Mario Puzo's script survive production. That's
the first half. Like,
yeah, the first half of the movie, or like the early parts of it, are the bits of Mario Puzo's script that evidently
because
survived.
there's a dramatic shift that happens at exactly 48 minutes into this movie, which is looking at it roughly a third of the way through. So is that first half what is
Yeah,
credited?
I think we might consider it that. I mean, you can kind of tell when it starts to
Oh, you can
shift
tell when
over.
it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that. Well, no, we won't say it yet. We'll save it. But no, continue. You were saying.
Yeah, well, Mario Puzo of The Godfather just tapped to pen this movie, wrote it as a two-parter. So Superman 1 and 2 were was supposed to be filmed back to back, and they kind of were. There's a little bit of drama in between the release of Superman 1 and the finishing of the filming of Superman 2. The production was paused for 2 years, I want to say, because they were working on finishing this one. At first, they were working on the post-production process, and some drama between Richard Donner of The Omen. Again, an interesting choice to tap for a Superman movie. I feel like that was his big one. was The Omen.
Yeah.
The original, so I think
Whoa, Hugh, who could forget 3 episodes of Kojak? I mean, come on. Let's give him some credit here.
Okay, yeah, like Zack Snyder. Credit where it's due. Yeah, Richard. So it might interest you to know, Jamie. I don't know if you looked in too much to this. That the original director that the producers came to for Superman, for Mario Puzo's script, was George Lucas, but he was a little busy making a little movie you might have heard of called American Graffiti. Just no, kid, it is Star Wars. He was busy on Star Wars.
Yeah, it was Star Wars.
It was Star Wars. And after George Lucas basically, said, I can't do it. Sorry, guys. They went to Steven Spielberg, who they just couldn't quite make it work schedule wise with him. So
That's a shame.
Yeah, that is
because I've always felt that the ideal person to make a Superman movie was like pre-2000s Spielberg. Not that he couldn't do a good job now if he was given the right script, but like, 70s through 90s Spielberg, he would have been like the ideal person in my mind for a Superman movie. So I'm a little saddened to hear that at one point he was going to direct this movie and it didn't work out.
Well,
that's a shame.
It only didn't work out because Richard Donner became available and The Omen had been such a big hit. So they kind of immediately, they didn't get all the way through. They didn't get all the way through the negotiations. They basically were just like, Richard Donner made a lot of money with The Omen. Let's tap him instead.
Well, that was, I mean, hey, I no hate to Richard Donner, but why?
Apparently,
why The Omen? Why look at The Omen and go, yep, that's Superman right there.
That feels very Superman. Like, they also, because Mario Puzo's 2-part script was considered, quote unquote, pretty heavy, they decided to have a couple of other guys come in and rewrite the second half to be a little more goofy and fun and action adventure-y, and maybe even a little cartoony. So that's why we have the Lex Luthor plot that we do, which we'll get into, I'm sure.
Yes, we will.
And supposed to be filmed back to back, so a lot of things at the beginning of the film are sidelined and pushed to part 2, Superman 2. Marlon Brando sued the producers 2 days into the release of the film, claiming that he did not receive the money that he was owed in his contract, the percentage of the box office gross. So he started a lawsuit and then got himself excised, basically, from the second movie. So that got removed. Production paused because Richard Donner...
I've also heard, before we move on from Marlon Brando, I think is it Letterman? There's a famous clip of Christopher Reeve being interviewed, and I think it's Letterman, and he asked him, like, oh, what was it like to work with Marlon Brando? Was it a dream come true? And he's like, no, not in the slightest.
Not even a little bit.
Because he didn't care. It's actually a really good clip. I don't remember exactly what he says word for word, but it was very interesting and refreshing how honest he was. And he's just like, I think Marlon Brando could be a great inspiration to young actors today, but he just doesn't care anymore. So it actually wasn't a pleasure to work with him at all. I was like, oh boy. Well, I mean, you can tell. You can watch the movie and be like, Marlon Brando does not give a fuck about this. In the slightest. He is not trying.
He's deliberately mispronouncing Krypton over and over.
Yeah, it's Krypton. Yeah, he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
He really doesn't.
Well, yeah, he really did not give a fuck, and he was very upset that 2 days into the theatrical run of the film, he had not received his 15% of the profit share from the box office returns.
Give them a little bit, man. They still gotta collect the money.
Yeah, so he sued immediately, and that didn't work out in his favor, so they got rid of him. Richard Donner and the producers did not get along, to the point that a different guy, Richard Lester, was brought in. Maybe it's not Richard. Director Lester was brought in to kind of be the go-between for Richard Donner and the producers, since they weren't on speaking terms. And then they had paused filming. Richard Donner had shot a good portion of Superman 2, but they paused filming to promote and finish the first one. And after the first one was released, someone asked him, "Are you excited to, continue directing the second one?" And Richard Donner's response was, "Well, if the producers are on it, I'm not." So he basically quit to the media, and the directing pivoted to the other guy. But because the budget was sort of going crazy, some of Richard Donner's footage had to be used, and since it had been shot 2 years earlier, there's big continuity errors in Superman 2.
And it is Richard Lester. You were correct.
Richard Lester. Okay, cool.
A tale of two Richards, as they say.
Yes, a tale of two dicks, much like 28 years later.
That's better. That's what I should have said.
Yeah. There's also some interesting stuff about how Richard Donner basically, when confronted over the fact that he had, within a month, gone way over budget and was 2 weeks behind, told the producers, "Well, you never gave me a budget. So, tough." Which doesn't necessarily bode well for your relationship, your working relationship with those guys.
Okay, so before we get too much further, a lot of good things being said in the chat that I want to respond to. First thing, have you seen Superman 2? Because I have not. Okay, because that's the one with the Donner cut, correct?
There is a Donner cut, yeah.
Okay, of the second one, not of the first one, right?
Yes, the first one there is no alternative cut. This is entirely the Donner version.
So okay, a couple things. First of all, a super chat from Muggy. Thank you very much. Says, "Hey, I know you guys are still on your Disney arc, but would you take a gander on a James Bond arc starting from Dr. No until Casino Royale?" That sounds like a lot.
I would be interested. I mean, I am. I would be interested in that as well. I might want to go past Casino Royale. I mean, it's definitely my favorite, but I do enjoy Skyfall as well. So
yeah, I mean, if we're gonna watch that many James Bond films, we might as well watch all of them. You know. But that sounds like something we could do at some point for sure. Someone asked, "Is this the one where Clark incinerates the last of the Kryptonian babies?" No,
that would be Zack Snyder. So,
Man of Steel.
What credit that we're giving here? Do not get us wrong. We're going to take it away immediately. It's just like a small little bit to his credit.
Well, let's talk about Superman movies broadly. Sure. I guess we'll talk about Superman broadly before we jump into the movie itself. And there's a couple other things I wanted to respond to in chat in the process. So, Superman, the movie, Superman 1978, is not a movie I had seen ever in my life until last night. I am not actually, the biggest Superman fan. I didn't read a lot of comics growing up or anything like that. I believe I watched some of Superman the Animated Series when I was a kid, and I certainly watched a lot of the Justice League series when I was a child. I thoroughly enjoyed that. But, Superman, my knowledge of Superman was basically all just through cultural osmosis, right? I didn't see Man of Steel when that came out. I saw it when I watched it with the EFAP guys. There's a whole nice big breakdown talking about that, and you can learn all my thoughts on it. But in short, I think Man of Steel is an awful pile of shit garbage movie, and I think I hate just about everything about it. So when I heard that there was going to be a new Superman coming out, the James Gunn's Superman, trying to start over the DC universe, I was optimistic at first, but now the more I see of it, the more I hear about it, the more clips that are shown, the more trailer footage, everything I see of the new Superman makes me want to see it less and less. There's a couple big red flags for me. One of the big ones is the removal of "and the American way" from his motto, because I really just think that is a signifier of how shit the movie will be, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. That they just couldn't bring themselves to include that is just really pathetic as far as I'm concerned. One of the major points of praise that I'll give the movie we're talking about today is how they included that motto. I think it was really deftly handled, and I think it could be a perfect example of how you could do basically the exact same thing in a new Superman movie. I don't at all agree with this weird attitude people have that, like, oh, an optimistic, super like goody two shoes, Eagle Scout Superman just doesn't work in a modern setting. It's like, no, it absolutely does. And so does End the American Way in his motto. So I'm really annoyed with a lot of the things that apparently are going to be in this new James Gunn Superman movie. I will check it out just because I'm morbidly curious at this point, but everything I see about it just looks wrong. We've talked about it before. All the vibes are wrong for me. Um,
Yeah.
and that's all you can really get from a lot of trailers is vibes and stuff, but the movie looks like it's going to be overstuffed with villains and side characters and a whole bunch of weird shit. I hate the way it's shot, but we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But really my familiarity with Superman media is was pretty bare. I saw Man of Steel, like I said, with the EFAP guys and thought it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. I hate that movie very, very much. So watching this movie for the stream, I was excited for a sort of campy, optimistic, heroic, fun version of Superman. And there certainly is that here. But this movie is not very good. There's a lot of things I really do not like about this movie, and we'll talk all about them. But there is a stretch of this movie that I quite enjoy. And it doesn't start until 48 minutes into it, but we'll talk all about that. There's a lot to appreciate about this movie. There's a lot of charm. I think it might have the stupidest ending in movie history, but we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Certainly for large blockbusters, I'm inclined to agree on that point.
Yes. I this is a charming movie. I like Superman. I like the idea of Superman that I have received through cultural osmosis. After watching this movie, I went back and rewatched the very first episode of the 90s Superman the Animated Series, which, like I said, I believe I saw as a kid. And because I was curious how they handled his origin story. And oh my God, it's so much better. It's so much better than what they do in this movie. But we'll talk about that too. Basically, long and short of it is, I'm not a Superman expert. I didn't grow up reading the comics. I didn't really watch many of the live action Superman movies until later in life. I think I would have enjoyed this movie more when I was a kid. But I like the idea of Superman, and I want Superman to be good because I do think America doesn't have a lot of mythic heroes, if you will, because we're such a young country. And I think Superman ought to be one. It's kind of the best we got, except for like actual historical figures like the founding fathers, etc. So I want Superman to be good for the sake of the culture and everything like that. And I would like the best bits of this movie to carry on into the new James Gunn movie, but I'm a little worried about it, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. Based on that trailer, I think you are right to worry a little bit about it because it feels like he is sort of tipping his hat a little bit to the sort of cynical version of Superman that Zack Snyder created, probably because I don't think he can risk completely alienating the audience that was into it. Because for all its faults, I think Man of Steel did make a pretty decent amount of money back in the day. So I think it is something that some portion of the population really resonates with. I would say my experience with Superman is kind of similar. I'm not a huge fan or expert. I have read the original Action Comics where Superman was debuted back in 1938. More out of an academic interest than anything. I did find it rather fascinating that he spends a vast majority of that comic advocating for the United States to stay out of World War II because what Hitler's doing in Europe, it ain't our business. Which is kind of a little bit of a culture shock, especially considering how big the character became in the post-war era, right? He sort of became like the icon of truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah. Well, American isolationism goes back quite a long ways.
Quite a long time. Yeah.
Yes.
I do think that's kind of funny. But I am a big fan of the Justice League cartoon. I don't think I've ever actually watched Superman the Animated Series, so I probably have to add that to the rotation. I have been rewatching the Justice League cartoon, and there have been a lot of storylines in that series that use Superman's best traits to very well to their advantage, which is kind of refreshing to see. The big one that I'm thinking of is he ends up on a planet, on a war world planet, where a villain forces gladiators to fight, for the entertainment of the people, and then he defeats them in battle to sort of like cement his own lordship over the planet. And Superman ends up defeating him. And when offered the crown, he turns it down and gives it to the next guy who he believes will do the honorable thing, and sort of like move forward and create a democracy and help the people, and do what will need to be done. And I really like that. I think that is a strong George Washington sort of vibe. So
Yeah.
I'm yeah, I am uh not thrilled with the plot structure of this movie, but in terms of like the way that Superman represents specific values, I think that they do a pretty solid job, better than
Yeah,
anything
I
else that
agree with
I've
that.
seen.
And I
And
want to clarify one thing I mentioned. I don't actually think that what Superman is best understood as a goody two shoes,
no,
but people have this attitude for some reason, or at least people did more around the time of like Man of Steel, and especially people trying to defend Man of Steel, that that he's like a Boy Scout goody two shoes kind of guy, and he's like super optimistic, and that just doesn't fit in our modern world. And I hate that attitude. I'm glad to see at least that the James Gunn movie looks like it's trying to be a bit more optimistic in terms of Superman and his attitude. I have some worries about the values, especially as I mentioned, because they're removing the "and the American way" part from his motto, which I think is a bad choice. But as I think Muggy said earlier, I think Superman should be viewed as like a paragon, essentially.
yeah,
Like that's what he is. Like he is probably the quintessential superhero for that reason. He's a paragon of a number of different virtues, and we'll talk about those virtues as we go through the movie. But like he's an inspiration because he shows us like the best we could possibly be, right? You know. And I really like that, and I kind of hate the idea that you can't have him be that, which is an idea that is just coursing through Man of Steel, which I really think I've said this before, but I think Man of Steel is a crime against the American spirit. I think it's that awful. And so I was very glad that this movie was much more in keeping with a positive vision. And I think Christopher Reeves is the best part of this movie. And to someone who asked earlier, no, I've not yet seen the documentary about Christopher Reeves and him as Superman and everything. I'd like to see that. I've heard very good things about it, because he is the best part of this movie, hands down. I love the way he plays Superman. I love the way he plays Clark Kent. It's
yeah.
very charming. It's the best bit about this movie, and because a lot of the rest of the movie surrounding him, not great. But we'll talk all about it. I suppose, unless there were any other questions
No, I think we can
about the
get
general meta of Superman in this new movie coming out. I'm sure people will have questions about it. But I think we can just jump into the plot. Start talking about Superman,
yeah.
1978.
Let's go. Let's do it. So yeah, I mean the plot begins. Now this is one of the thing like this is really I'm going to get this out of the way early. This is the only moment I think where I'm going to give Zack Snyder a bone here in the way that he structured the plot of Man of Steel, not in the way that he wrote the characters or considered the consequences of any of the actions that will be taken, but in the beginning of this movie we open after a pretty lengthy credit sequence with John Williams' fantastic score playing over it. Just
Yeah.
um, we open on Krypton, and we watch as Jor-El sentences General Zod and his cronies to the Phantom Zone. Um, they are gone from the rest of this movie. They do not return
Yes.
until Superman 2, but we spend a very long amount of time setting them up, and then we waste a lot of time setting them up and setting up a generational conflict between Superman and them, and then we don't do anything with it. We kind of they are gone and
Yes.
out of mind. And the one credit that I will hand to Zack Snyder is that he made General Zod his villain in the first movie. He set him up at the beginning, and paid him
Yes.
off at the end. Um, which I
Yep.
think is a better way to structure a movie that is nearly like in this case 2 hours. You're giving us very vital information at the beginning and then not doing anything with it, so it ends up feeling
Yeah.
like we
It's
meander
a
for a
low bar,
while.
but he does clear that bar. Um,
Yes.
so we'll give him some credit. That's about it.
Yeah. Now,
Uh,
to be fair to Richard Donner and to Mario Puzo here, they were intending this to be a two-parter. So like, of course, it's going to come back and pay off as like the major conflict and resolution in Superman 2. But I I just am not a huge fan of movies that like first movies in a franchise that anticipate immediately that you are going to be invested in the sequel. You know, that kind of irritates
yes.
me a little bit. 28 years later
Yeah.
kind of did the same thing, right? Like,
Oh, it certainly did. I think I worry that the new Superman movie will also do that, but we'll see. No, I totally agree with you. And I think this movie is structured horribly, actually.
yeah,
Like it
it's
just
not structured great plot wise, I think.
no. But let's
Um,
talk about the very first thing we see. Very first thing we see is it's a nice little thing before the title sequence where there's like a curtains that open to like kind of a 4:3 screen and we see the black and white. It says 1938 and we see like the opening of Action Comics. We get a little bit of narration kind of setting up Metropolis and the Daily Planet. And like that's a nice touch. And then the titles zoom out of the screen to fill the entire big widescreen image, and that's when we get the big fanfare, the big John Williams fanfare. Um, and then we basically, because we'll talk about the structure and we'll talk about some of the finer details here, but basically, I think this movie basically wastes 48 minutes. I basically think nothing that happens before adult Clark Kent arrives in Metropolis is worthwhile, um, and could just be cut from the movie. Not because I think a Superman movie should just cut to him as an adult necessarily, but because of the way they handle his origin story is pretty bad, unfortunately, and it just wastes a lot of time. One obvious example of the wasted time is the fact that we set up Zod and then do nothing with him. That's a shame.
that's my
That's the
big yeah,
waste.
that's my biggest problem with the beginning of it, apart
Well,
from Martin Brando
here's another
absolutely
one.
fucking
So
phoning it in.
yeah, and Marlon Brando absolutely phoning it in, and the reasoning for why he sends Superman off alone instead of going with him, all that sort of stuff is really thin and poorly done. It's much better handled in Superman the Animated Series. We'll talk about the differences. But then, like him as a child, I don't think they handled that stuff very well either. It's all like super thin, super surface level. And then 48 minutes into the movie, we finally get to Christopher Reeve as Superman as an adult coming to Metropolis. And as I was watching it, I'm like, yeah, when we first see his powers in that section of the movie, that would be a much better reveal. I think the movie should basically just start with the Action Comics thing, establishing Metropolis and the Daily Planet, do the big John Williams fanfare title sequence, and then we're right into him arriving at the Daily Planet. I think it instantly becomes a much better movie. Um, so I mean, that's one thing, and there are other, I would say, insurmountable problems, like with Lex Luthor's plan, that basically need a page one rewrite to fix those.
Yeah.
But that would be one way of instantly improving this movie, as far as I'm concerned.
So
Um,
I've a couple things in the chat that I think we should address real quick. Metacoon says at least Terrence Stamp was incredible. He's not. He not in this one. He's not. I mean, like he's fine, but he's got like one line. He doesn't do
yeah, he doesn't have
anything.
much to do. He's not given enough for me to go, wow, he's incredible. I think he's like serving the
Yeah.
part fine, but we don't really get any context for him yet. So it's
In the second one, I'm sure he's quite good because I think that is a very
he's a
like
great actor.
yeah, I think he's a great actor, and I think that conflict between Superman and Zod is something that I find pretty compelling. He's not in
Sure.
this one long. I think he's got maybe 10 minutes of screen time before he's thrown into the Phantom Zone, and most of it, or maybe 15 to 20, actually, considering how long the opening scene is. Um, but he doesn't do much. He stands around in a circle and then gets launched into a little little
To
square
a square plane
square
thing.
plane
Yeah.
and floats through. Like, yeah, he's doing what he can with what he's got.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I do like the way that Jonathan Kent's death is handled in this one.
Oh,
To take
sure.
some credit away from Zack Snyder, this is
Oh God, please do it.
totally, totally not a retarded version of how
Yes.
Jonathan Kent meets
Yeah.
his end. I
I
think
would say a lot of that stuff between him and his parents in this movie is like fine, but we don't really get enough. Like when he's standing in the field with his mom saying an emotional goodbye, I'm like, we didn't really get any time with his mom
she's
and
not.
his
Yeah, she's not
relationship.
really in it all that much. I like
No,
the
and
conversation scene between his father and him, between Pa Kent and
yes,
Clark. Um,
yes, I would say so. Like the idea that, so the idea that like he wants to play football and like not show off, but he wants to like be who he is and be honest, right? It's a little bit the same sort of tension that happens with Dash in The Incredibles, right? And
yeah,
his dad's like, "Look, we believe you were sent here for a greater purpose. Like, obviously, you were sent to us for a reason. We don't think it's just winning or scoring touchdowns,
yeah,
right? Like, it's something greater than that. Like, I think you can aim higher than like you can use your powers for greater good than just being really good at football and having all the ladies love you. I
yeah.
think you can aim higher than that, and that's a nice little touch. I like it, and we're playing a little bit with like should he be revealing his powers? Though I much prefer in the animated series that he doesn't really develop his full power set until he's like going through puberty and coming of age. I think
Well,
that's
and if
just
we
a
had
lot cleaner.
cut in at him in high school, like instead of seeing the setup for Superman 2 basically at the beginning, if we had started with him in high school, I think that would allow us to keep a lot of that emotional link to his family,
Yeah,
and not have to waste too much time. As cool as Krypton looks, because I've seen a lot of people mentioning how sci-fi and neat it feels in this version of
yeah.
Krypton,
There's
and
some
I
fun
agree.
stuff.
There's some
There's
cool
some fun stuff.
shots.
Yeah.
There's some really cool shots, especially when they're all falling and like they're red and the background is black and or like dark blue. That stuff looks
And they're like
incredible.
reflective suits
Yeah,
are
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
cool looking.
I think that
Yeah,
is
there's some
all really neat.
neat stuff. Yeah. And as people mentioned, when Jonathan Kent does die in this movie and he like clutches his heart and says, "Oh no," and then falls, like that's really tastefully handled. I like that.
Yeah.
I didn't get a whole lot of their relationship, and so I didn't probably feel the impact as much as I could have if we got a little more meat on the bones of that relationship.
Yeah.
There's like we get like one scene, one nice conversation, and then he dies essentially.
Yeah, and
It's
what it
like,
does
yeah,
for him is nice, right? Like when he's at
sure,
the funeral and says to his mom, like, "All this power and I couldn't save him," right? Like
yep, that's a nice touch
that's a
too,
really
for sure.
great moment.
Yeah,
More of it would have been
much
nice.
much better. It doesn't even
Oh,
begin
it
to
doesn't even
describe.
come close to like Pa Kent just putting his hand up and saying, like, "No, don't reveal your powers. Let me die in this tornado."
Yeah,
Maybe,
or like, hey,
or
maybe you should have let those kids die. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe let all 30 kids in that school bus drown in order to hide the fact that you're a superhero. That feels so like you
I
said, a
hate it.
crime against the American spirit. Like
Yeah,
that is
it really does. So yeah, and when I'm sort of, saying that a lot of this opening 48 minutes is narratively worthless, I think the best bits in that opening 48 minutes are okay. Like they could have been stronger, and ultimately I think this movie, barring any actual changes, any rewrites that could have strengthened those earlier scenes, I think this movie would be stronger if we just cut 48 minutes into it. Um it's not that it's all worthless necessarily, but I think so much of the opening 48 minutes of this movie is really carried by John Williams' score, honestly. It's a lot of scenes that I don't think would be nearly as impactful if it weren't for that music. So let's talk briefly about the music. John
yes.
Williams, he's the goat as far as I'm concerned. He really just is the greatest of all time in terms of film score composers. I love his style. I think it very well serves movies like Superman. The main fanfare in this is pretty incredible. I really like the long title sequence because you just get to hear that whole opening suite. It's pretty great. Ultimately, I think this movie kind of relies on it as a crutch in this first act because there are so many scenes that are just long and we're not actually accomplishing much, but we're playing really great John Williams music. So you're like, yeah, I'm kind of fine with it. I think his score is great in this movie. It's kind of funny to like hear this because it came right after Star Wars, and there are little bits that go up. That sounds like Star Wars, and then there are little bits that go. Actually, that sounds a little bit like Harry Potter is going to sound eventually. He's got some isms, some John Williams isms that definitely carry through his work, but he has a very distinctive style. It's just very refreshing to have a movie with such a grand symphonic fanfare to it because
Yes.
that sort of style of orchestral kind of classical influenced writing is it's disappearing to a large degree. I'm a big fan of scores like Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score for The Social Network, but I do miss the sort of old like symphonic classical style. And when I see trailers for the new Superman movie doing just kind of a slowed down version of the John Williams score, a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's great. They used the original John Williams score because that's the best Superman theme. We can never do better." And look at them reusing the good stuff. That's a good sign. I'm like, "No, it's not a good sign to me." It feels cheap and lazy and like stolen valor a little bit, especially when they do a kind of slowed down version that lacks all the sort of like vigor and energy and enthusiasm that the sort of up tempo fanfare of the original has. Like slowing it down just feels like, you remember. Like they're milking the nostalgia from it, is sort of how it feels to me. And going back and rewatching the opening episode of Superman the Animated Series and listening to the music in that has a nice sort of fun, energetic, action-packed fanfare as well. Not quite as good as the John Williams score, but it's like you can just write another fanfare. Like James Gunn,
Yeah.
if he wanted to, could hire a really talented composer to create something like the John Williams score, but with a different theme, but that actually has the same sort of energy. But he didn't do that. And I don't want to give him credit for just stealing the John Williams score and making it worse. That just feels kind of hacky to me, honestly. I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the same way, but a lot of people are giving him credit for that, and I just don't think he deserves it.
I was more excited about it because I think that one of the things that we have, especially since God, when I like even with X-Men, right? Like in the 2000s, which is a movie that I really like. But there is a really great theme song from the X-Men cartoon that has
Hmm.
been tossed to the side and completely forgotten. I mean, granted, they brought it back in Multiverse of Madness, of all places, when Professor X comes out, and it's a slow, nostalgia milking version.
Ugh,
Um,
yeah, hate
I'm
that.
not a huge fan of this idea that like we've been kind of hiding from doing this. Referencing these older scores that have a lot of meaning until like we absolutely need them to sort of try to bring people back into the theater because wow,
Yeah.
hey, look, we played the music that you like, we played the music that everybody remembers about it. um I was more excited about James Gunn doing that at first because he didn't strike me as the type to necessarily make that the reason why he was doing it. But then in an interview that I read, he did say that he instructed his composer to sort of just do a rendition of the John Williams version because he liked it when he was a kid. And so that just didn't, it just like it doesn't feel like he did it for the right reasons. Um,
I think
and
you can
yeah,
tell by the arrangement of the new version they didn't do it for the right reasons. You know what I mean? It's like it has the notes, but it's slower. It's like it doesn't have any of the energy. And I'm just
yeah,
like, oh. Like, and that's the constant move. It's the slowed down because it's this tendency people have. And you hear it in everything, but where I hear it most evidently is in like renditions of Christmas songs where they think slowed down equals more dramatic, and I hate it. I hate
yeah.
it so much. Like you hear it in like I'm a huge fan. Brief tangent. I'm a huge fan of "Oh Holy Night." I think it's one of the better religious Christmas songs. Right? It is so hard to find a version of "Oh Holy Night" that isn't just like slower equals more dramatic. It's like, come on, there are multiple verses to this. We need to keep it moving. Like it's supposed to sound like the weary world is rejoicing. Can we pick up the tempo a little bit, please? And I feel like doing a sort of slow, broad version of you know the Superman theme that lacks the joyous punch of the brass section, like announcing, because fanfares are like announcing the arrival of a king, right? Like
Yeah.
it's supposed to have that grandiosity to it. And he's this big, heroic savior figure. And I don't know. I just feel like they're missing that. They're doing it for the wrong reasons, and it feels cheap and lazy, and I don't
Yeah,
appreciate it.
someone in the chat asked, "What's the difference between using the John Williams theme in Gunn's movie or the MCU doing a cheap cameo?" There is none, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it feels that way, right?
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, that's how it feels to me. I think people are giving it credit when it doesn't deserve it.
yeah,
Honestly, I would rather they did something that tried to evoke the actual spirit of John Williams' score, but with different notes.
yeah. I think
That's what
that
I
would
would
be,
prefer.
yeah. The other thing that I really wanted to draw attention to with John,
But really quick,
no, sorry, go
before
ahead.
we move too far away from
I'm not.
music.
I wasn't moving away from the
Oh,
music. I
okay,
had another
go for
note
it.
to the music. John, like it, small one, but I just rewatched Saving Private Ryan recently for Memorial Day, and John Williams did the score for that as well. Um, the music that he uses for Saving Private Ryan also was pretty heavily inspired, like Superman by Fanfare for the Common Man. And I think that the fact that he recognized that thread is important in both of those kinds of movies is also pretty emblematic of what this movie gets right about Superman. Um,
Yeah,
the American values, the traditional set of American values that Superman represents for John Williams, like the common man's fanfare. I think
yeah,
that being tied into like kind of a classic Memorial Day film, with Saving Private Ryan. That just shows how well that he was understanding what this movie is about.
yeah.
I think
I
that
would
that's
say
something
so.
that's missing when you jangle the keys like James Gunn has been doing
I
for the
think
movie.
John Williams understands the sort of like spirit and philosophy and values at the heart of the movie he's scoring, and understands how to draw upon like the wealth of European and then eventually American classical music tradition in order to evoke certain things using those sounds. I think that's why he's one of the greatest for me,
Yeah,
because he's actually
absolutely.
shockingly versatile compared to a lot of composers, and he can do these like big, um these fanfares, these very like bright, hopeful, joyous, enthusiastic fanfares, but he can also do very, very tense kind of 20th century style atonal classical music. He has a broad palette of sounds to draw from, and he's very good at understanding the sort of spirit of the story and bringing it out in the music, and I really appreciate that about him. A couple people have asked about the Hans Zimmer score for Man of Steel. I know it gets a lot of love. I don't really remember anything about it. Not in a bad way.
I
Maybe
can't
it was.
really like yeah, I can't hear it in my head the way that I can
I
hear
I'm
this one.
I would I would I wouldn't be surprised that if I went back and listened to it, I thought it was pretty good. I think Hans Zimmer is pretty good a lot of the times. Sometimes he can be a little like shy about hummable and memorable musical themes, and it's more about like just a general vibe, and but in general, I think Hans Zimmer is pretty good. I don't remember anything about his Man of Steel theme, and it might be because I just hated the movie. I wasn't really thinking about whether I liked the music or not. Maybe if I went back and listened to it, I would have a stronger sense of whether I like it or not.
Yep. Um, so one more note on music and its use, like especially if you're doing a remake and sort of using older score, right? I saw somebody in the chat mention Godzilla minus one, and I think that you're kind of hitting the nail on the head with that one. They use a mix of their own music and the classic score. One of the
Yeah,
things that I would like point you towards in that movie that I thought was incredibly effective was when they use the that really kind of iconic that da da dun da da dun da 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 theme when the
Yes.
boats are going to, going to attack Godzilla at the end of the movie. I think that that is probably one of my favorite examples of reusing a classic piece in the midst of everything else that you've got, like where you've redone
Yeah.
other bits, I think that that was incredibly effective and a really great example of like, paying homage, say it that way. Okay.
It's just that,
It's
and
a
like
really
what
good
it is,
way of doing it, of
it's
executing that.
just a new arrangement of the same piece at roughly the same tempo. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not like, hey, remember that theme from the original? Now we're gonna slow it down like da 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 da. Like if it did some bullshit like that, I think I would hate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Or it's like trying to milk the emotional attachment you have to it instead of just reusing it in a fun
In a way
new
that like
context.
that, yeah, that works, that makes sense with
Yeah.
it, right? Like it's
I
yeah,
also
it's
felt
great.
like, because I think originally that part of the theme was sort of meant to represent the military, like the,
Yeah.
um, and so bringing it back in that context is like, oh, they understood what the purpose of that original theme was in the original movie. Anyway, and it's a great theme. I don't think any other Godzilla movie has had anything close to a theme as iconic as that. So that's another reason to bring it back. Yeah, I think I just, it'd be one thing if at a pivotal moment in the movie, let's say the new Superman movie is actually quite good, right? And at a pivotal moment where it really counts, like they really make you wait for it. They really make you think you're not going to get it. They don't use it in any of the trailers, but a really big pivotal heroic moment, they play a new arrangement of the same John Williams theme, but it's got the same energy and the same sort of general up tempo. It's just a more modern recording of it, essentially. I think that would hit pretty hard. I think I would like that if that were the case, but
Yeah.
I just don't appreciate it.
Another one that does that pretty well, I think, is Casino Royale. They wait until
Yeah,
the very last minute to give you that iconic James Bond theme in that movie, but the
yeah,
rest of the original stuff feels evocative. The rest of the original music in the movie feels evocative of the older songs. It's an
yeah,
orchestral arrangement of Chris Cornell's "You Know My Name," but then they bring it full circle right by the end of the movie. So I think that that's another example of doing that well.
sure.
So who knows? Maybe James Gunn will uh have that. He'll make use of that, right?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it'll be good. I don't expect it to be good, but maybe. Who knows?
Trevion Washington, no Godzilla movie has had the balls to use Blue Oyster Cult's Godzilla. Yeah, one of them didn't. They
One of
didn't. They
them
haven't
did
had the
in the
balls to pay
credits.
for the Blue Oyster Cult version.
Yeah,
They have had the balls to have a shitty cover of that play
yeah.
over the ending credits
That
of
was
what was that?
terrible.
Godzilla King of the Monsters.
I think it
Yeah,
was. It was one of the ones I saw, and I was
you were
very.
with me for that one. Yeah, we went to see
Oh,
that
right,
together.
right. We did see that together. Yeah, that was terrible. Oh, I hated that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that movie sucked donkey balls. Anyway,
yeah,
back to Superman. So we have that initial opening bit with the Action Comics, and we see a little bit. We hear a little talk about the Daily Planet as it's envisioned as like this sort of idealistic paper, trying to do its best to provide good to the world and all that sort of fun stuff. And then we do a long title sequence with the big theme that we talked about, and we do some cool planetary visual effects that I think are pretty neat,
yeah.
honestly. And then we land on Krypton. And the opening scene is Marlon Brando barely acting as Jor-El, and he is talking to like disembodied heads of the council about why the people in this little imprisoned circle that's like spinning around them like a hula hoop that doesn't actually fall to the ground, going wheel, 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 and talking about why they should be sentenced for treason, essentially. You remember exactly
Yeah,
what they do?
he talks about like the other two being sort of like animalistic and just violent and murderous, and then he talks about General Zod, once trusted by this council, who attempted to stage a revolution and a coup and overthrow and put himself at
Because
the
yeah, right. Because he
yeah
wants to be king. He wants everyone to bow to him. He's a tyrant in
yeah
in waiting.
Krypton. They
Krypton.
will be banished from Krypton. And I see someone mentioning Coruscant or Coruscant. Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on there. Funnily enough, I do encourage, like, if you're ever curious about where all the mispronunciations in the Phantom Menace and the George Lucas directed prequels come from, you can go watch the behind the scenes and find out that they all come from George Lucas himself, who can't seem to settle on a pronunciation of any of the shit that he came up with. So, like, Gungans and Goongas are
Yeah.
used interchangeably um, multiple times, which is just a funny note. I think in this instance, it's Marlon Brando probably just being like, I'm not going to bother to learn how people would pronounce this. It's a
Well, I mean,
made up
here's the
magic word. I don't care.
yeah, and the thing about Marlon Brando is he couldn't be fucked to care as far back as The Godfather. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
really, like he couldn't be fucked to remember his lines in The Godfather in 1972. Like
And he somehow
arguably,
turned in a great performance in that one, but like I don't understand why Francis Ford Coppola would ever decide to work with him again after showing up on The Godfather and like not knowing your fucking lines, dude. Like
yeah. Well, I mean, he didn't know his lines, so obviously they had to be infamously, I guess you could say, taped to his co-stars' chests, so he could just look down at them and remember his lines. It's just that's so unbelievably embarrassing. And part of the reason that he gets away with it is because at least in that movie he turned in a good performance. Right? It's kind of an out there performance still. He does like one of the only real criticism I would make about the acting in The Godfather is that he does feel a little bit like he's in a different movie than everyone else. But I mean, it's still it's solid performance. It's iconic and all that sort of stuff. So like he got away with it for many years. He is phoning it in hardcore in Superman. He phones it in pretty hard in Apocalypse Now, rather infamously as
yeah.
well, showing up fat, not knowing any of his lines, and
Yeah.
then it's all downhill beyond that. Um, yeah, he's not great in this. As someone
And like
mentioned, he is
consistently suing the directors and producers, be like for like, hey, you didn't give me my money. It's like it's been
yeah,
2 days, guy. Give us a
relax.
minute.
Yeah, so someone said Marlon Brando walked on set, mumbled the lines he remembered, then left after one take. Like that's how it feels, certainly. Krypton. Anyway, so he's talking to the disembodied heads of the council, who are very 1984, as someone mentioned in chat. Yeah, and then they're all say guilty, 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 and then they disappear. I guess because they don't need to wait for the outcome of all of this, and they're like, hey, it needs to be unanimous, Jor-El. So you can save us if you want. Like you can join us. You can be part of our, glorious future. And he's like, nah, I'm out of here. Like, okay. So then they get imprisoned in a giant plane in the sky. So that's cool. That's one of the goofier effects that I wouldn't say
Oh,
holds up
I
super
don't know. I
well.
liked that. I thought that was I was like, yeah, it's like charmingly campy, you know?
Yeah, that they get imprisoned in a giant like plane in the sky is pretty
A
funny.
rhombus, a floating two-dimensional rhombus, like just
I mean, it is funny. I would say some of the visual effects hold up and that they actually genuinely just look good, even for today. I'm trying to give credit and praise to those. And this one's just like, it's fun because it looks very silly. Um, I wouldn't say it actually looks especially great,
yeah.
but it is kind of fun. It looks like an old, like iMovie effect. Honestly, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then beyond that, now we have to go to
So
him
he's
talking.
dealt with the treasonous coup, and now he has to go and meet face to face. Jor-El has to meet face to face with the council to discuss how Krypton is going to explode within 30 days, and none of them want to believe it. Uh,
Yeah, doesn't really have the sense of like urgency that you might expect.
yeah,
Like
it's something,
he's
but
phoning it in. He's phoning it in. I don't know how else to say it. Like I feel like he's not acting the way he should considering the circumstances. he's just like I guess he's just being stoic man.
Yeah,
And it's
I
like,
mean, look,
okay.
Russell Crowe's performance in Man of Steel is like better. It's better. He like
It
he
is
feel
better.
there's gravity to it. He feels like there's some urgency. It's overblown, like it's overdone. That opening sequence of Man of Steel, there's
Sure.
way too much happening. But Russell Crowe is at least like giving us a convincing sort of like I'm trying to save my home world
Yeah.
kind of
Some energy.
performance. Yeah,
Yeah, some
energy.
passion. Um I want to talk. Well, no. Okay, we'll get through the entire opening bit here, and then I want to rewind to how Superman the Animated Series does it, because really it is just night and day, so much better. Um, so Marlon Brando, pretending to be Jor-El, is telling the council, "Hey, our planet's gonna explode," and they're like, "Yeah, fucking right, dude. No way. You're always
Well,
you and your kooky theories."
yeah, well, they basically say something like, "Yeah, we don't deny your data, but your conclusions are silly, and we don't like that, so we're not going to do anything about it." And then they make him promise not to leave the planet because that would incite panic. And he promises that neither him nor his wife will leave, and
It's
that's good
just
enough. Good enough for them, I guess.
that's so thin. It's just so thin.
Yeah,
Like,
I like
you can't leave or else there'll be a panic. He's like, all right, I guess I won't. Haha, but I didn't say that I wouldn't send my son. Anyway, goodbye, son. Have fun on Earth.
yep, basically.
I mean, that's how he treats it, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll give it a little more credit than that. But anyway, so yeah, like, you can't leave. And he's like, all right, neither me or my wife will leave. And he's like, well, and then he's talking to his wife and he's like, their planet, he will, you know, they'll be able to grow up there and it'll be fine, essentially. And I don't know. I'm struggling trying to discern like what is going through Jor-El's mind in this moment. Like, he doesn't seem to really care ultimately that much about anything he's saying.
I think that's really just like entirely on Marlon Brando
I
in
know
this
it is,
scene
but
because
I'm
it's
just
like
like
they're giving him dialogue about like his son, he'll grow up, Earth's lower gravity will make him super strong, or his dense structure will make him super strong, and
another
the
clumsy exposition of
yeah,
his powers that is ultimately entirely unnecessary as far
yeah.
as I'm concerned.
Like
Yeah.
we don't really need all of this. This is just sort of like establishing for the normies who are not big comic fans in 1978 exactly how Superman works in a scientific way, right? Like a yellow
Yeah.
sun is what does it, and he's from another planet, right? Like we could have easily just been like, yeah, no, he's from another planet, so he's just like, you know, that's his thing. He's super strong. Um, but I do like the idea like the thing that I like about it, right, is that like him being on Earth specifically, like it is the Earth and the solar system and the yellow sun, like this specific location that gives him his power. So like he wouldn't have that if he was somewhere else, right? I do
Yeah.
like that. So I think it's a little clumsy. We're getting some stuff that I think is pretty good. It's just like it could have been delivered. It could have been delivered
It could have
better,
been
and it could have been
delivered well.
delivered
Yeah.
without Marlon Brando just like absolutely half-assing everything he's doing.
Because the
Like,
ultimate result is that he's going to send his only son away into space with really not much feeling about it. And at this point, like, the only reason he's not going with him is because, well, I was told not to.
yeah,
Like, okay,
I
really?
promised I wouldn't.
It's like, that's so thin. That's so lame, honestly. Because I don't know, it just feels like he doesn't actually love his son very much.
Yeah, and
And
like he says within 30 days, and then as soon as he launches his kid, the whole planet collapses. Or like as soon as he puts his kid in the spaceship, the planet collapses. So you have to start
like,
to wonder, like,
immediately.
did he wait 30 days or did it just start happening? And
It looks like
yeah.
it just started happening,
Yeah. So he
honestly.
was like within 30 days. Like technically he was right.
Yeah. One interesting thing, sorry, not Trayvon, Topaz Dude says, the Krypton bits were supposed to be shot in Italy, but Brando was wanted by the police as a result of sexual assault allegations during the production of Last Tango in Paris. So, yeah, Marlon Brando was not a good person. in the slightest.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
There's so
that's
many
pretty well
examples too. Like
documented.
this is I don't know that there's ever been an actor that was so in demand that regardless of how much of a nightmare he was to work with every single fucking time he stepped on set, people still bent over backwards to get him in their movies.
Yeah.
Like that is wild.
Well, he came about at a changing time in American culture, right? And he had a sort of acting style that was a bit more grounded and realistic, you could say, broadly speaking. It wasn't as big, it wasn't as theatrical. He wasn't playing to the people in the cheap seats, right? It was a
Yeah.
certain because for a long time in the early days of film, acting for the screen was very similar to acting for the stage, in terms of how things were played. I mean, we tended to do things in wider shots, partly for that reason, and everything was bigger, right? Everything was a bit more theatrical. And then he kind of comes along and he sort of starts this whole like mumble acting trend, essentially, where it's a bit more like the better way of saying it would say that it's a bit more realistic, right? It's a bit more how people actually behave in real life. And then you get movies like oh god, what's it called? It's a really famous one. It's based on a play. Black and white.
Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah, it's A Streetcar Named Desire, where when you watch that movie, that's 1951, he does feel like he's in a different movie than everyone else. Everyone else is playing it like they're on a stage. Everyone else is playing it like it's the 50s, but he does feel kind of like ahead of the curve in terms of a sort of grounded, sort of gritty, less polished realism that is very compelling. And he was kind of ahead of that curve, if you will. And I think a lot of actors of the next generation very, very much inspired by him, right?
Yeah, no, that for sure. It's just, by this point in the 70s,
By this point, yeah. Well, but here's the thing. Like we mentioned it already. Like he's phoning it in on The Godfather, and everyone's like, "Holy shit, this is amazing." You know what I mean? So like
I guess
that.
that's true. He does have a particular kind of presence.
He just has this really compelling screen presence, and he's like the most famous actor of this new Hollywood generation, right? He's the guy. And so everyone is willing to put up with it.
Yeah, I guess
For a
yeah.
while. I mean, but honestly, after
After
Apocalypse
Apocalypse Now,
Now,
people I think started to be like, dude, come on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like he is an impressive actor. Recently, and by recently I mean a couple months ago at this point, I watched a movie called what is it called? It's called Guys and Dolls, based on a Broadway musical, right? 1955, Guys and Dolls. It's like him and Frank Sinatra, right? And they didn't like each other at all because like Frank Sinatra was like, he just mumbles the whole time and he can't dance and he can't sing. Why the fuck is he getting the leading role? Because Frank Sinatra wanted the role that Marlon Brando got in this movie. And so when you watch Guys and Dolls, the music is really good. I think the story is quite good. And Marlon Brando is very good at playing the character in the non-singing scenes. And then when it comes to the singing scenes, he's like just okay. He is kind of fine. He is passable as a singer. But then when Frank Sinatra sings, it's like, holy shit, no, that's a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like he plays the part better. And it's kind of how I felt about I got to see Hugh Jackman in The Music Man on Broadway. And everyone else was singing and dancing circles around him, but he was very good at playing the part in all the non-singing scenes. And like that's kind of how Marlon Brando was in Guys and Dolls as well.
Got it.
But
Okay.
but it's kind of like it's that new era. It's like things were changing, right? Like it's a new kind of acting style that he was sort of a pioneer of. It was incredibly influential. So add that to him being in some very, very financially and critically successful movies, and people are just like, yeah, I mean, he might be raping people, but he is Marlon Brando. So like, and so what if he doesn't know his lines? We'll just tape him to someone and he'll give an Oscar-worthy performance. So yeah, we'll just put up with it. We'll just look the other way. We'll just pretend we're not noticing. that he's kind of a monster. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
All right. Well, yeah, he's being a he's really not turning in anything particularly special here. So it's no wonder
no,
why they
certainly not.
immediately like turned around in Superman 2 and replaced him with with Superman's Kryptonian mother instead. Um
Yes.
yeah. So,
Anyway, that's a
yeah,
little
yeah.
tangent about Marlon
This is
Brando.
well right before he's about to, leave the movie for good because
Good.
he mumbles
Get him
out
out
some
of here.
exposition and launches Kal-El into space, and then the planet explodes, and it's a pretty cool looking sequence. That's all I got. It's a pretty cool little looking
Yeah.
little sequence. And then we follow Kal-El floating through space in his weird little crystal ball spiky spaceship until he
Yeah.
lands in Kansas.
And he's aged a little bit, kind of oddly along the journey. He was like a newborn at first, and then
Yeah.
he's a toddler by the time he gets there, which is an interesting choice. Now, briefly, I want to talk about because I don't really like much of this except for some of the visuals. I think a lot of the exposition is really clunky in terms of establishing his powers and why the motivations for why he's sent off alone are paper thin. The performances aren't great. Um, not a huge fan of his origin story here. So I wanted to rewatch the opening episode of Superman the Animated Series to kind of see how they did it. Now, I don't know how this is in the comics. I'm just going to go based on the animated series because that's what I've seen. It's so much better. One of the things that they do is open with Jor-El. And first of all, this is a thing you can do in animation quite easily, but I kind of wish they did this in terms of the casting. Jor-El looks a lot like adult Superman is going to look. He's very evocative of the character design of Superman in the animated series, right? And that's a strong choice, right? Because when we see Jor-El in the animated series in the opening segment, he's very kind of brave and heroic like Superman is going to be. And so you see that parallel and you're like, oh, okay, I see it. I see where he gets it from. That's a nice little touch. But it starts with Jor-El doing research at like, I don't know, I guess the equivalent of the Arctic or the Antarctic on Krypton. And he's there with his wife and it's like, all right, well, we finished our research. It's time to head home. And, his wife is not happy about it at first. He's like, I thought you'd be ready to go back after 4 or 5 months. And she's like, well, I'm a little worried about what the data you've collected is going to say. Like, I'm worried it's going to support your conclusion. So right away, we've established that he has this theory that the planet might implode or explode, but it hasn't happened yet. And he's doing research, to try and, see if it's correct or not. Already, I like that a lot better. When we get back, we introduce Brainiac, who's basically the equivalent of like Hal from 2001. He's like a supercomputer AI that sort of runs everything. And there's a sort of antagonistic relationship that Jor-El has with him. That's kind of a nice touch. Ultimately, Brainiac has looked at the data and concluded that the planet is going to explode and very soon, but he doesn't tell the council that because and eventually when Jor-El confronts him about it, he's like, no, if I told them how imminent, the planet's destruction would be, they would want me to spend all my time and resources drawing up evacuation plans that would be futile ultimately. And so what I'm doing is I'm offloading or downloading myself to a satellite so that I can survive and the whole history of Krypton will survive. And Jor-El's like, why would you lie? You betrayed us or whatever. And he's like, don't you want something of Krypton to survive? Because if I don't survive, not a whisper of Krypton will live on. And I'm like, that's really
Well,
good,
yeah.
actually. That's really
Yeah,
interesting
that's
that this
pretty.
like AI supercomputer would look at it that way and would ultimately betray them because it's like, no, it would be futile to try to evacuate everyone because it's going to happen so imminently. I'm just going to save myself. And wouldn't you want that? Wouldn't you want some history of your civilization to survive? It's like, ooh, that's good. And so Jor-El is like, oh fuck, I gotta warn everyone, we gotta evacuate and everything like that. He tries to stop Brainiac, and Brainiac is like six the police on him essentially. And then ultimately he destroys a ship that Jor-El has built that he plans to help like evacuate as many people as he can on, and he destroys the ship except for the life pod, the lifeboat essentially.
Yeah.
And so that's why everyone can't go. the only person that can go is his son. So ultimately, like that's his last hope, right? He's the last son of Krypton. That's the name of the episode. And so ultimately, because the ship has been destroyed by Brainiac, who's kind of sabotaged them ultimately, because he sort of, pulled a Hal and betrayed them, right? Ultimately, that's the only reason he can send his son and not go with him. And when we see a bit more of his relationship, and we don't spend a lot more time, to be clear. It's not like we're getting a ton more time with this than we do in Superman the movie. In basically
It's
the same amount
probably
of time.
it's probably less. Superman animated series episodes are like 21 minutes long
Yeah.
total.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time. But in the same amount of time or less, honestly, we get way more of his relationship with his wife and his son, and we really feel the weight of his decision to send his son off on his own. You know what I mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
everyone is going to die otherwise. There is no other hope. At least he can live on, right? And it hits way harder. It's
Yeah.
so much better. The
That's pretty
justification for
fucking
why
good.
Superman is sent alone. I like the betrayal from Brainiac because it also establishes that Brainiac can be a thing that comes back later. They don't do anything with Zod. That's not a thing in Superman the animated series, or at least not in this very first episode. Um, it's really effective.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
quite
like, I
like that.
think
It's way better.
you could make it work in a way like the way that, because Zod is an interesting character to have interact with Jor-El as well, right? So like the I like how we see in Zack Snyder's version, again, like the very bare minimum of credit, right? We see that Zod has his own ideas of what to do to save Krypton, and his involve starting a military coup and taking over essentially as the dictator. He's foiled, and he has to be sent into exile, right? That, I don't mind it, actually. I think that that's probably the best thing that Zack Snyder added to that version of Superman is feeling the weight of how like Kryptonian society is sort of collapsing in on itself as well as the planet, right? So like we got all kinds of good development for future villains. If we do something involving Brainiac, but like we also pay lip service to the fact that Zod has been exiled to the Phantom Zone for attempting a coup against the Council and trying to supplant the Kryptonian government, I don't see why we can't include that some way and then have both of those together functioning to, push the series further, right? I think that works out pretty well. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't. It's interesting. So, Superman the animated series team wanted to direct their energy towards more established comic villains. Very little Zod. I Is Zod not as much of a villain in the comics? That's interesting. I did not. I'm not aware of that. Did not know. But yeah, I think you can make it. I think you can make a hybrid of the two work pretty well. Like you can establish multiple characters and villains and storylines moving forward. It's
Yeah,
it.
they could have.
Yeah,
They could have done a lot. They had plenty of time.
yeah.
Plenty of
That's a
narrative
really
real
great.
estate.
It's a really great opening, honestly. That's pretty
Oh
good.
yeah. Yeah, I liked the first episode of the animated series. I was like, oh, that's smart. It just feels like they just used that time very, very well and established the sort of emotional weight of the decision. That's the big thing that this one lacked for me, is the sort of love of parent and child. The other thing that the animated series did that I think was kind of a strong choice is that they had him already be a toddler
Oh, but by the
before he
time he's
was
sent
sent off.
away, yeah.
Yeah, so he has slightly more personality. He's still kind of like goo goo gagaing, but like he's kind of playful. And there's a nice little bit where Jor-El sort of picks him up, and he's like, it must be nice not to have a care in the world. And he's just a happy, smiley baby. Like little things like that, little nice touches. Because you can feel the weight of what Jor-El's dealing with and how he's like, trying to, give his
Yeah.
son the best life he can, considering everything that's happening. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah,
I
in this
liked it.
one, he ages into a toddler as he flies through space.
Yeah,
I
and
guess
we get
I guess the
like
spaceship
weird,
just
well,
like
like
had a nipple or
disembodied
something.
voice. the disembodied voice of Marlon Brando saying, "And remember, because this is going to be the theme of the movie for some reason, don't interfere with human history." It's like, okay, we can we talk about that? You're sending him to go live on Earth and telling him not to interfere at all, and it's like, well, he's going to have an influence on the world. It's kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a
Yeah.
dumb choice as well
Well,
because
and like that
ultimately,
doesn't even really like, I don't know, that doesn't feel like it's really established as a major conflict for him in the
until the
movie.
very end in the stupidest possible moment, yeah,
Yeah.
because it's not like there's a conflict over whether he should quote unquote interfere with nature, I guess you could say, by saving people from situations that they end up in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's no sort of, oh, should I save these people or not? It's just as soon as he arrives in Metropolis, he basically just decides to save any people that are ever in danger that he comes across, which feels like how Superman should be regardless.
Yeah.
But like surely that's interfering with their history, right? Unless you're reading it like whatever you do, don't spin the world really fast to rewind time. Like whatever you do, don't go back in time to rewrite history. Like that would be a weird thing to tell your son in like the message you send him off with. It's just very strange. There's a lot of the in this first opening bit, a lot of clunky exposition of Superman things, like his powers and why they work and how they work, that just really aren't necessary as far as I'm concerned. Because like Superman, even if you haven't read comics, in 1978, he's been on the scene for a
40
while.
years.
I feel like a lot of people are going to have, through general cultural osmosis, a basic idea of what Superman is, such that you could, not that you necessarily couldn't have any nice moments with him as a child with his parents, but you could start the movie with him showing up in Metropolis, and you could start the movie with him just seeing him as Clark Kent, getting some funny little lines implying some of his powers, and then ultimately when they're finally revealed, to go, yeah, it's Superman. Like they could have done that in this movie. And no one would have gone like, excuse me, why does he have his powers? They didn't mention that it's the yellow sun that gives it to him. Like
Especially not
that
in 1978. I don't think there would have been
no.
like we there wouldn't have been people on Reddit, like tearing into the movie being
Yeah.
like, we didn't get all this exposition. Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to briefly just like bring up, I did not catch even a word of Marlon Brando's exposition as he was flying through space in the spaceship. I couldn't
Well,
understand any of what the fuck was being said, and I did not feel like turning on the subtitles. So all
well,
it sounded like was a cacophony of mumbling to me.
yes. Yes, because it's edited like a Red Letter Media video with like people overlapping lines. Like there's a couple different lines all being overlaid on top of each other in that scene. It feels like how a Plinkett video is edited. It's very strange. First of all, they like kind of cake it in reverb to make it sound sci-fi for some reason as he's flying through space, and they literally have him talking over himself.
Yeah.
So, in addition to what is clear in terms of what he says is kind of stupid and clunky and ham-fisted and doesn't really add anything, and then eventually it gets to a point where you just can't understand what's being said at all. And I suppose they're trying to show the passage of time, but it's edited like a shit post. It's very strange. Just remember, son, do not cause a paradigm shift in the Gnostic aesthetic of Earth. Whatever you do, son, make sure you read Plato's the Cave or whatever. What is he reading in?
Oh,
It's not the Cave. What? Yeah,
I don't know. Is it the Republic?
yeah, it's the Republic. Little baby, like not baby, he's like 6 years old or whatever, is reading Plato's The Republic in Man of Steel. God, I hate that movie so much. Anywho,
In this one, he's listening to an audiobook of it, basically narrated by
yeah.
Marlon Brando.
Yeah, so Marlon Brando, Kyle R says that's what Joe Biden's inner monologue sounds like. Yeah, I could believe that. I could totally believe that.
Yeah, yeah.
So eventually, the little spiky crystal meteor lands on Earth in Kansas,
Yep.
and they're like, "What in tarnation?" And so,
He's found in the field by Jonathan and Martha Kent, as like because a tire exploded. one of their tires blew up
Yeah.
as a result of the spaceship landing, and they've yeah we get a little bit of like again nice little moments, right? Like she wants him to just like essentially she wants Jonathan to just essentially let her. She's like, "Can we keep him? Let's keep him. Like we can just
Yeah.
hold it. We don't got to tell nobody where he came from. We can just say that he's my you know my sister's boy, and that he
From
has no
North
from
Dakota,
North
I
Dakota.
think she says. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and he's now he's an orphan because she's assuming that she's dead, I guess. Um, and at first, Jonathan's a little bit like, ah, no, we gotta do things by the book. We should tell him what happened and everything like that. And then the car starts to fall off the jack, and there's a little moment of panic. And then, oh, lo and behold, little baby Superman is overhead pressing the car up to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, let's talk about this briefly. Well, first of all, this is where you start to realize that the whole movie is going to be shot with Vaseline on the lens. Not literally, but there's like a bloom filter
yeah.
over the entire movie.
Yeah,
I don't
it's a
like
little
it.
blurry.
It's a little yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why that choice was made. I don't especially like it, but this is I'm like, "Oh no, I hope the whole movie." I thought maybe just his childhood would be shot like this, but it's basically the whole movie. Not a huge fan of that. But
Eh,
anyway,
yeah.
so let's also talk about the fact that they just give him the superpowers right away. The animated series, for example, and maybe some comics knowers in the chat will be able to fill us in on this. In the animated series, he doesn't really start to develop his full powers until he's like in high school. The implication is sort of going through puberty, coming of age, all that sort of stuff. He doesn't fly until then. He doesn't have super strength until then. He doesn't have the ability to like melt things with his eye beams until then. He's just generally pretty smart and competent and athletic as a child. And then when he's a teenager, he starts to turn into full on Superman. I think that's just a much cleaner narrative choice because then you don't have any of the problems of like, okay, but how would having all these powers affect a child growing up? Because you want him to sort of be an everyman who suddenly has superpowers, because he's supposed to sort of embody small town America at its best, but then also he has superpowers because he's an alien. I think it doesn't really have a huge impact on the movie, but I do. But as soon as
Because
they
we're
show
like
him as a little
we show
kid,
him as a
like
little
picking up
kid
a
like
car,
picking up the car, but like we don't really see him struggling with what it means to have powers until he's a teenager. So in effect, that's like they ended up doing that anyway. Like
basically,
all things
yeah.
considered.
But they do make him super strong and super fast from the very beginning. And I'm like, unfortunately, now I'm thinking about what that would do to a child.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think that it's much easier the other way. And also because in the animated series, like he's told, I mean, he learns at some point before, because okay, so he arrives and then they find him in his little space pod and they're like, can we keep him? Let's call him Clark. Hard cut to him in high school, right? So we skip over most of him as a little baby. And then eventually they tell him he already knows that he's adopted. They must have told him that at some point, maybe when he was like 8 or 9 or whatever. So he knows he's adopted, but now he's starting to develop these powers. And this is when they finally tell him that actually he's from outer space, right? And so then we get that whole moment where he's sort of like coming to terms with his powers and coming to terms with his true origin and things like that. Like that just all feels a whole lot cleaner to me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Than
Like he
what they
was
do in this
raised
movie.
as like believing he was a kid from a farm in Kansas, and
Yes,
then he
because
finds
that's really
out that
important to who
yeah,
he is as a character, right?
yeah, like he was raised just believing that he's no different from anybody else, and then he starts to discover that he's been endowed with you know great power, and he ends up needing to come to terms with that at a formative part of his life. That just feels like I don't know. It feels clean. It feels like your standard sort of superhero
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? Like it's the Peter Parker story, like he's in high school and he's just like your average nerd who is working to get by, and then he ends up with this great gift that he starts using
Hmm.
for his own, purposes until a big moment, a big emotional moment happens, and he has to come to terms with the fact that great power means great responsibility, and like you're
Yeah,
here for a reason. Like the Peter Parker story and the Superman story should be similar. Like they should be
broadly speaking,
pretty
yeah,
like
they should have a lot.
broadly
Yeah.
speaking, they are
I
pretty
think it
much the same.
complicates things unnecessarily to have him have superpowers as a child, especially if you're not going to address how that would obviously change who he is.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of like, getting to a certain age and sort of coming to terms with like his true parentage or whatever and the effect that has on him, and going through puberty and developing all these powers and abilities, because essentially he's not framed like sort of a nerd, or like to the degree that he's picked on by other people. He's already sort of like a boy wonder. Like he does really well in school. He's very sort of athletically built already, and basically he has to come to terms with having powers that most people don't have, right? And like you've
Yeah.
been gifted with talents and abilities that make you something of a paragon, and now you have to deal with the responsibility and weight of that, on your shoulders, which is a different kind, but it's broadly similar story to Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, I think broadly, it's just much cleaner to have it be a sort of like coming of age moment for him, and that's when you get his first flight and everything like that. In this movie, obviously, he arrives and he can immediately lift their car, and they're like, "What? This kid's crazy." And then we see him. Now we flash forward a bit. It's Christopher Reeve yet. It's some other actor whose name I don't remember. Perhaps you can look it up for me. Um, and he's kind of a dork and an outcast. He's like on the football team as the guy that handles all their gear and equipment and like the water bottles and stuff like that. And meanwhile, all the other football players are kind of like rude to him. There's one girl that wants to invite him, like, "Oh, we're coming over to so and so's house and we're going to listen to records. You want to come?" And then the bully guy comes along. He's like, "No, he can't join us. He's got to clean up this mess that he caused just to spite him, right?" And
Yeah.
then he's like, "Oh, I'm so mad. I'm so mad he kicks a football really far." And you go, "Wow, he kicked that football real far because he's Superman." And then he runs past a train, and this is I'm so sorry. It's the stupidest looking effect I've ever seen in my life. It's very funny.
It's a pretty goofy looking. The
It's the
racing the
goofiest,
train
like
is really
super
really
fast running. Like, and I just think this whole scene should just be cut from the movie. I'm sorry. It's kind of goofy, can't be fun, but the way he runs, like the weird puppeting of his legs, it looks so bad. I don't know how else to describe it. It looks terrible. It's very funny. I mean, I
yeah.
was laughing hysterically when I was watching it. And then but it's like, oh, see, he's fast as a train. It just feels like oh, these are classic Superman things. He's faster than a speeding train, so we need to have a scene of him outrunning a train, even though it looks really dumb. But anyway, he outruns the train, eventually kind of catches up to the car of the bully and the other girls and stuff. And they're like, "How the hell did you get here so fast?" And he's like, "I ran." Haha, laugh, laugh, laugh. And they're like, "Oh, well, let's get out of here, man."
Yeah,
But
let's
he's
get out of
back
here.
home.
That's freaking me out. Like they
Yeah.
drive away. Yeah. So I mean, I kind of like it. I kind of like the showing off. Like, and he gets scolded a little bit by his dad. He's like, I mean, I didn't mean to show
Mhm.
off. It's just he's a teenager and he's
Yeah, I
got
like this conversation, yes,
yeah.
and it does humanize him a little bit. I just the way it looks of him running
But yeah,
past
yeah.
the
That
train.
particular the way they accomplish the effect, it does not look good. Like it. I don't know if it would have looked more impressive to me back in 1978. I struggle to say that it would have. I don't know that it would have. Um,
Yeah,
that this particular effect I don't think aged well at all. I doubt it. I doubt
no.
it looked as impressive as they thought it did even back then.
Yes, and so this is where we get the scene where it's like, "Hey, I saw you showing off," and he's like, "Is it showing off if that's what I am? Like, does a bird show off when it flies?" I like that line,
Yeah,
actually. I think
This
Like
is this
I
is my
like
favorite
that
part
that's
of this opening bit is like the scene where he
for
has
sure
his
the
like
scene.
moral
Yeah.
grounding moment, right? So this is one of the things that I think the movie does
Yes.
really well. And we mentioned a few people have
Yeah.
mentioned
This
this
is
like
yeah.
this is I do
The
wish
best
that
scene in the first
best
48
scene in the
minutes of the
first
movie.
48 minutes of the movie, and I wish more of that first 48 minutes of the movie had been devoted to his relationship with his father, his Earth
Yeah.
father and mother, as opposed
Mhm.
to spending time with Marlon Brando mumbling some exposition on Krypton.
Yes.
I think that that would have served us a little better to have that included, but it's not like this is a bad scene and that it doesn't accomplish what it's
No.
going for. Like it does, and
It
they
is a
they
pretty good
nail it,
scene. I think yeah.
Yeah,
I think so too. There's a couple different ways you could go about trying to improve this movie. One, as I mentioned, is just cutting into essentially 48 minutes into the movie and just jumping in media res, right? Not doing his origin story or implying it throughout as the movie continues. That's one way. Another strategy would be just having him arrive and starting with the Kents finding him, right?
yeah,
And then we can spend a lot more time with him and his parents. If we're going to see these kind of scenes, I just want them to have more meat on their bones because, like I said, this is the best bit in the first 48 minutes of the movie. And if the if the whole first act of the movie had this vibe and was this well written, I would have preferred the movie a lot better. Other strategy would be okay, you do show the whole bit on Krypton and you show some of these early scenes, but you need to really retool some of those Krypton scenes to be more like the animated series because the way they handled it was just so much more efficient and clean and emotionally impactful. So, a couple different strategies there, but definitely if you're going to keep anything from before the first 48 minutes, you got to keep this scene and I think you got to expand on it to give it more weight because this scene his dad sees him show off in front of the other kids and he's like, "Hey, I see you showing off." And he's like, "Oh, come on. I'm just trying to show the world what I am and what I'm capable of." And he's like, "Listen, when we found you, we knew that we found you for a reason and for a greater purpose, a destiny, that all that sort of thing." And I think it's something greater than just scoring touchdowns and showing off in front of your friends and being good at football. Like I think there's a greater purpose than that. And I think there's a sort of implicit understanding that keeping his powers a secret is probably better long term because this will inform how he operates in the next section of the movie.
yeah.
With Clark Kent, that whole personality sort of hiding who he is as Superman and not showing anyone both sides of himself, right? I would like more meat on the bones of the why. It's just sort of implicit in this scene that like it's it will serve your greater purpose ultimately to not make to not reveal the full nature of what you're capable of yet until you're ready or until you know what that purpose is. That's just sort of implicit in how they talk about it, but I would like a little more meat on the bones there. I would
And
like a little bit.
here's my strategy for how to take take this and rework it a little bit to make it to give this opening bit more weight, and really let it shine more. I mean, it already shines pretty well, but like to really like bring
Yeah,
it
it's a good scene.
to that emotional moment, right? You've already, especially they were making 1 and 2 back to back. That was the original plan, right? And Zod, who we're establishing in that Krypton scene, is not going to show up until the second movie. So my thought would be, let's move that Krypton sequence. So we get in this one we establish that he's a farm boy from Kansas. We get that relationship with his adopted parents. We see him sort of like develop his powers through adolescence and into young adulthood, and then we get the revelation of where he's from, and he has that reckoning, and he gets a little bit of that. His his father dies, and he has his Uncle Ben moment, or we get the rest of the movie, right? We can have the first villain really like we can shine Lex Luthor as the first villain in this film, and then we
Sure.
open this like because I think what ends up in the original draft, what ends up happening is that he redirects one of the missiles into space. Somebody in the chat mentioned this, and I think I saw this on Wikipedia as well. He redirects one of the missiles into space, and when it explodes, it frees Zod and the other two from the Phantom Zone, right?
Oh,
So
okay, sure.
at the end of this movie with the missiles, right? He goes up, he throws the one into space, we just watch it explode. We don't like, and then he goes back down. We don't do the resetting time thing. We're gonna get rid of that, right? But he goes back down. We finish off the movie. We end on the nice note. We keep, the world is safe now thanks to you, Superman. There we go. And then at the beginning of the second movie, that's when we show him arriving. Like we show Jor-El putting Zod in the Phantom Zone and sending his son away, right? We redo
Yeah.
it a little bit more to be like what we get from the animated series. Maybe we recast with Russell Crowe instead of Marlon Brando. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then we cut to the end of the we show Zod flipping and his little cronies flipping through, and then we cut to the end of the first movie. We recontextualize the explosion, and we show the explosion freeing Zod from the Phantom Zone. And there you go. Now we've got two. Now we got two pretty solid little like opening sequences here, as
Sure.
opposed to one where we got some good stuff, but it's in the back half of the opening.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to you don't have to waste all that cool sci-fi shit that you did in the opening of the first one, because it's just going to be the opening of the second one, and it's going to
Yeah.
give it a little bit like it's going to be kind of established that this is a little bit more of a sci-fi fantasy movie than this one ends up being. This one doesn't really
Yeah.
play on that later on, and I think if Zod is like an alien foe to be faced down in the second one, it benefits you a bit more to set that tone early on, right? So that would be my strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things I like about the way the animated series does it is that he doesn't know anything about his super I was going to say supernatural, but you know what I mean, like alien origin. He doesn't learn anything about that side of himself until he's like his coming of age moment, when his parents show him. Uh, in this movie, based on how this interaction goes, it sort of seems like he already knows the general gist, already. Like he's learned it already, and the only real question is like what he should do with his power. And as much as I do like the scene, I would like a little bit more of the like reasoning for keeping it a secret. Now, unfortunately, Zack Snyder was very, very preoccupied with whether he should reveal his powers. Like that is the ultimate question of the whole first half of Man of Steel, and his answer to that question is awful.
Yes,
It's like
that's
genuinely
terrible.
horrendous. One of the worst things you could possibly do, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, no, humans are too panicky and scared, and they can't be told that there's life on other planets. So therefore, maybe you need to let people die in order to keep your powers a secret.
The fact that
Like, Jesus Christ.
his moral compass being Pa Kent tells him like just keep your head down even and don't make waves even if it means allowing other children to die when
Yeah.
you could have done something. Like what the
And to
fuck?
let him die ultimately.
Yeah, and
it's
to let him
terrible.
die. It's terrible. It's terrible.
As we mentioned, this one is certainly an improvement on that, in that it's like, I don't know what your ultimate destiny is, but I think it's a little bit grander than, scoring touchdowns. Implication being like, it is probably better to reveal your true powers in the right moment as part of whatever your grander purpose is. Like, not to show off, not to like, not to be popular in school, not to impress all the ladies by being really like being much better at football than all the other guys. Like you can do better than that. And so maybe wait for the right moment, sort of the implication there. And that's certainly better. That's certainly better. I just think I like what the animated series does better, where his powers don't really come about until this moment, because then I don't have to wonder what the hell his childhood was like. But yeah, I think I take your point that him not discovering really the stuff about Krypton and his parentage and all that sort of stuff until the second movie would have worked better here. A, because we can, save all that stuff and spend more time on him being Man from Smallville. But B,
Yeah.
it could just be a discovery later. Because as is, all right. So what happens here is that someone mentioned it earlier. I think it was George's Rex says, oh, what did he say? Oh God, I don't remember who said it now, but like, lucky he got this little grounding moral compass pep talk from his dad when he did, because his dad's on a ticking
Yeah,
clock.
this is lucky he gets the moral grounding now because Pa Kent is
Yes,
on a clock here.
exactly. That made me laugh a lot because immediately at the end of this scene, he has a heart attack and dies. Like, oh boy. And that, like, it's handled tastefully. Uh, the coincidence of that's a little crazy, and it does feel like we're rushing through some of these beats that really we should give a little bit more weight to. But it is a nice moment because then the mom sees it and is like, "Oh my God, Jonathan!" And then basically he tries to save him. He can't. We cut to the funeral, and he's like, "All these powers, and I wasn't able to save him." That's a really nice moment too. I like that. I like that a lot. That he's like, that's weighing on him, like that he wished he could have been able to save him. To say that that's better than the way Zack Snyder handles it is the understatement of the century. Because obviously in Man of Steel, his dad's just like, no, don't save me. People can't know that you have superpowers yet, so just let me die, even though you could have probably easily saved me without alerting anyone
Yeah.
to the fact that you did it. God, that scene's so terrible. Anyway, but nice little moment here where he's grief stricken, right? A brief
Yes.
little moment with the mom at the funeral in the field. We cut around to him at
We got
night.
around yeah, him at night, and he goes into the barn and he discovers what I thought was kryptonite, but
I was sure it was kryptonite too.
but I guess it's not. It's a green crystal from Krypton. It's not the other, not to be confused with the green crystal from Krypton that would kill him. This is the
Yes.
one that if he throws it into the waters of the Arctic, it will turn into a house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
Very, very strange that he's just drawn to it supernaturally. The implication is that he doesn't know it's there, right? He just kind of finds it. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah,
But
that
I
one.
was sure it was Krypton, but kryptonite, but apparently it isn't. Then he's out in the field. It's a really nice shot where we sort of crane down, showing the field, and then he's standing there with his mom. It's a beautiful shot,
Yeah.
and he got the nice fluffy
And
clouds in the
somebody
distance.
mentioned the Cheerios box cameo is right there as
Yeah,
well,
and
because
he's like, "Hey, mom, I need to go now.
I need to walk about.
I need to walk about." And she's like, "I understand. I always knew you'd need to walk about eventually." Then they hug, and that's the end of that. There's some pretty shots. There's some great music. That scene, I just wanted it to be more impactful than it was. I was just like,
Yeah,
we don't
she's
really
barely been on screen really, and I think that this is
exactly.
one of the things where it's like it's a good scene. It's just that I wish there was more with her. Like again, and I wish there was more with her, and to
Sure.
give Zack Snyder the littlest glimmer, the littlest spark of credit here. He included Ma Kent more in the movie and kind of understood that there is an emotional part
Importance. Yeah.
and weight to her involvement in Clark's life. I don't like how he handles it. I think he handles it poorly, but he did at least include her in the rest of the film. That's something that I
Yes.
did miss from this one. I feel like it would have
Yeah.
been served well to have her in there somewhere, you know?
Yeah. Because
Um,
I think what's important about there's something okay. Because how do if we're going to eventually get to the point where Superman is an American from Kansas who supports, American values, truth, justice, American way, all that sort of stuff, and he's a sort of paragon of virtue, but he's very clearly part of and enmeshed in, human society and American culture specifically. Um, I think his relationship with his American human Kansan parents is really important to that. And
yeah,
sort of and that's another reason why I think it's important to not really give him his full powers until he comes of age. Because we need to ground him as a sort of normal good person first. He needs to have something of a normal-ish life before he gets his
yeah.
full powers. And I do think that's why, for the sake of who Clark Kent and Superman is, his relationship with the Kents is more important than it is with Jor-El and his mom, whose name I can never remember. Um,
Oh,
Obviously,
you
that's
meant the Kryptonian mom. Okay, I was about to
yes.
say. There's a
No,
lot
I
of
don't
people
mean
in the chat
Martha.
who are saying Martha, and my only question is why are you saying that name?
Why are you saying
Why
that
why are
name?
you saying that name? Tell me why you said that name.
Like when we were covering Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and all that sort of stuff, the little DC arc we did on EFAP. One of the things that really annoyed Fringy in particular, I remember, about Zack Snyder's vision for Superman is that like they act like his real name is Kal-El,
Kal-El.
right? Like, yeah, they really emphasize the Kal-El, and Fringy's like his name is Clark. Like his name is Clark Kent. Obviously he kind of has two names, right? He has two identities, but Zack Snyder is very, very intent on emphasizing the alien nature of him,
Yeah.
the otherness that is Superman, instead of the paragon of the culture he grew up in. Like he was raised by humans. He was raised in America. He was raised in Kansas, and that is sort of fundamental to who he is as a person. Like when Superman in the animated series learns of his like original heritage, he's kind of in shock and disbelief about it, and he's like, "No, my name is Clark," right? And it's sort
Yeah.
of like struggling with that identity a little bit, right? Um, I think that's really important to where we want Superman to end up, right, as this paragon character. And I think it's one of the many reasons. I think it's emblematic of the fact that Zack Snyder couldn't allow him to be there, that he like is really obsessed with the alien part of him.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. Yeah. Which is a shame. Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Clark. But anyway, in this movie, he needs to go on a walkabout, and this takes him to the Arctic or Antarctic? Question mark. One of those two. Why? Because it looks like the way Krypton looks. But why
Yeah, I
is
don't
he
know.
here?
Like this is one of the parts of the movie where I was like, this was one of the weakest parts of the whole movie for me, apart from like,
Yeah.
yeah, where he's walking around and he's out in Antarctica or somewhere, at some basically one of the poles, and
Yes.
he just sort of knows that he has to be there and that he has to take that green crystal that he found in his parents' barn and that he has to throw it into the water, and then
There's
that
just
will
no
it's yeah, I like
setup for any of this.
yeah, I was just kind of like, how okay, I mean, I guess we've
I guess this is going to be his Fortress of Solitude. It just feels like
yeah,
such a strange place to do this. Because he's like high school age, and it's a different actor who doesn't really look anything like Christopher Reeves, unfortunately. And there's not really enough time difference between the two to justify how different he looks. Um, so he comes here, he presses a couple crystal buttons and stuff, and then the disembodied voice of Marlon Brando shows up to tell
disembodied
him,
head, yeah, the
yeah,
Zordon head of Marlon Brando shows
comes
up
to
to
basically
mumble
tell him
some
a bunch
more
of stuff that
exposition.
we already know because we watched the prologue of this movie. So we don't learn a lot of new information here as well. This is just him learning it for the first time. And
Yeah, and
then,
well, and again, like it's done in such a way that I could barely understand what he was saying, and I just tuned out. Right, like I was like, I don't, there's nothing new that he's going to give me here, so I was just kind of like, all right, cool. And then he spends the
and at
next
the
12 years, basically,
yeah,
like that's his thing. Like he spends 12
doing
years
what?
getting Krypton history and lessons just like beamed into his brain, and now he's
That's sort of the
Superman.
implication. And then next time we cut to him, he's flying through the Fortress of Solitude, and he's got his outfit on now, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess he's ready now. I don't like any of this at all.
Now this feels pretty weak to me.
Yes, it's very weak. Because then we cut to Metropolis,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
now we're in the meat and potatoes of the
now we're
movie
in a
here.
different movie. Now we're in a very different movie. Kind
This
of like
is yeah,
28
this is
years
where
later.
This is where Mario Puzo's contributions started to be overwritten by the other two screenplay
Yeah, yeah.
doctors.
I mean, it does feel like there were too many cooks on this movie. It does feel disjointed, for sure. Because now we arrive in Metropolis finally, and this is where Christopher Reeve will finally enter the film. And it's like, oh, okay, now I like the movie we're doing for a bit. So it's the Daily Planet, and Jimmy Olsen is like looking around with his camera. He lands on Lois Lane. Um, and so we're introduced to the sort of basic daily operations of the Daily Planet. As she comes in, she's got her piece, and this is where we're introduced to Clark Kent, right?
Yes.
And he's got his glasses, and he's in Clark Kent persona, which is the sort of like timid, sheepish. You know, he's got big glasses. He's always pushing back up onto his nose, and he's hiding the full vision of what he is, right?
Yeah.
And I think this reveal would work a lot better if this is how we introduced him, but that's my opinion. We've talked about that already.
So a couple things that like I really love about this stuff, right, is there's a couple of
Yes.
running gags that are gonna be going on. For one, Lois can't spell, which I think is really funny. Like there's the editor is always coming in, or Perry White is always coming in to just be like, there's no Z in Brazier. You know, whenever she brings a piece to him, he's
that
always...
one I can understand. It is a running gag, and it is kind of amusing. I do wonder how you end up as a journalist if you can't spell this poorly. The no Z in Brazier thing, that I can understand a bit more, obviously, because it's a French word and all that.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
when she spells rapist with two P's, I'm like, really, Lois? Really?
I see.
like, "There's
I can buy that because she's so eager to be like, you know, the star reporter and to get things, you know, out and put on the front page and to impress people, that she's kind of like overlooking simple mistakes like that and getting kind of like, you know, kind of just basically like batted down a little bit, right? Like I can buy that, that's in her
Yeah.
character, you know, and I like that because that kind of tells us that she's like the energetic go-getter who's, you know, chasing down all the stories that she thinks are important, and she really wants to succeed and be the, you know, the number one in the office, but she's
Yeah.
like, she just can't be bothered with the, you know, small things like typos and subtle misspellings or not so subtle misspellings, you know. I don't mind.
A couple of people have said like, well, that's what the editor's for. Don't
Yeah.
want to put them out of a job. Yeah, it's okay. It's amusing. I do question how you end up, because it's not framed as a typo. It's framed as if she doesn't know how to spell, and I was like, really? You're a journalist. It's fine. It's fine.
I mean,
Usually
as
journalists are
someone who
word
works
people.
in a corporate writing environment currently, I've seen a lot of people who cannot figure out, you know, basic
Basic spelling
grammatical
things.
or spelling
Okay.
things, and you know, we have word
All right.
processors that can autocorrect, you know. She's
Well, that
working
sort of
on a typewriter.
explains. I don't know. That sort of explains why it's gotten worse to me. You know, an over reliance on word processors that'll correct that sort of thing. Anyway,
Yeah, I also really like when like Clark comes in and Perry gives him Lois's beat, and she's a little upset, and he has this little line where he says, I can't remember the beginning of it, but he gives two things, like, you got a good handshake, you know, solid resume, or, you know, degree, and he is one of the fastest typists I have ever seen. You know, like, I really like,
Yeah.
I like that line, that little bit.
yeah, little subtle things kind of hinting at the powers that he has are kind of fun. There's a lot of those in this little section. And I generally like the way this stuff is shot. There's a sort of like free floating kind of chaos, like longer takes and stuff like that, panning around rooms. That a lot of stuff going on, a lot of hubbub. You know, that stuff is
Yeah.
quite effective.
So
And
the Daily Planet stuff, I'm loving it. You know, like him being a bumbling, shy buffoon who doesn't really know what to, you know,
yes,
what to
I
make of
like that
anything.
especially. I think, like I said before, Christopher Reeve is the best part of this film. I really like him as Clark Kent. I really like his sort of strategy for flying under the radar. I think is very, very effective. This is actually one of the things that I think this does better than Superman the Animated Series. In the second episode, we finally get to Clark Kent arriving at the Daily Planet, and he just kind of seems kind of. I mean, he's very friendly, and he's the paragon of virtue you want Superman to be, but he's not really hiding his sort of strong, confident self.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of like that in this movie. He's flying under the radar by being kind of a pushover
So
a
this
little
is
bit,
okay.
or
This
invisible. Yeah.
two things I want to address real quick. Number one, Wasserman dyslexic has a Y. Um, and number two,
That's pretty ironic. That's funny.
number two, the thing that, like, there's always that meme, right, about like, oh, Clark Kent's disguise that stops people from recognizing that he's Superman is like a pair of glasses, right? Like he doesn't change anything else about himself really apart from that. And when it comes to like the Superman animated series, they kind of like do that, right? He's just sort of himself but wearing glasses and people just can't seem to tell. But in
Yeah.
this one, especially in the scene where he goes to visit Lois at her apartment, you notice that he's like kind of hunching his shoulders and he's changed all
Yeah.
his mannerisms and
Mhm.
he's bumbling around and everything. And that becomes so much more believable for me.
Oh yeah.
Where I'm just like,
It's
oh, this makes
incredibly
sense.
believable.
This makes so much sense.
And there's even that great scene, a brief shot of it was just in the trailer. We'll get to it later, where he's like considering revealing himself to Lois and ultimately decides against it that he's not ready yet. He
Yeah.
switches back and forth between the two in the span of like a couple seconds. And it's like, oh, he's good.
Yeah.
He can really pull it off. But like, I think people, especially that would criticize how that's handled in this movie, just do not understand human behavior. Like, he is really acting as a totally different person in terms of confidence level, in terms of his mannerisms, in terms of how he handles himself. I mean, he's deliberately trying to just be invisible, forgettable, but likable guy, right? He's fine. He's like, oh yeah, he's good. He's reliable. He seems nice enough. He seems decent and reliable, but like you're not thinking about him too much, And like you can really fly under the radar by doing a lot of these things. He doesn't really hold long eye contact with people. He kind of hunches over. He's kind of like always trying to get out of the way of people. He does a lot, and I think it's very, very believable that people
Yes,
wouldn't recognize the difference here.
Yeah. Also, Wasserman, this is on me. I did not realize that you were joking. That I apologize. Women can be funny, and I need to learn to accept that.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't know if it's obvious that dyslexic spelled wrong was supposed to be the bit, but it's
Either
hard
way.
to communicate in text.
Yeah. Either way, good joke on me. And I think someone also Dave L also mentions like Reeves isn't jacked like Henry Cavill in this one, or even I don't know who that other guy is, but he's not jacked like Henry Cavill, so it's a little bit easier to buy that he can hide his physicality. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he doesn't need to have like glamour muscles. I don't know why they decided that. So many superhero movies now, like they need to have their glamour muscles like super toned with like no fat on their body at all. And like they need to literally dehydrate before they film scenes. It's like, why did that become the standard? That's so annoying. It's like he doesn't look weak in this movie, guys. It's like, have you ever, like the difference between like Thor and like Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder versus Thor and Thor 1 is quite a difference as well. And like he looks plenty strong in that first Thor movie. We didn't need to like go full bodybuilder on it. It's very strange. But yeah, the fact that he's not super jacked muscle man helps with him blending in as well. But of course he's wearing like suits and stuff like that sort of disguise his form as well, So
Yeah.
I think they do a lot in this movie. I think that element is handled very, very well, and it's a lot of that is Christopher Reeve's performance, 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're introduced to the major players of the Daily Planet. We learn that Lois can't spell, but she seems like generally eager and nice. I'm not super like charmed by her in this movie. I think she's fine. I think a lot of people seem to like her more than I do in this movie. How do you feel about her in general in this film?
Yeah, I'm kind of on your page with this one. Like I was like, yeah, she seems She seems like a '70s love interest. Like I can tell the movie is setting her up as the love interest. I know from context, Lois Lane, Clark Kent.
Sure.
I don't know. I just was kind of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't blow me away this one.
This is less a criticism of this movie, but just interesting difference in how the animated series does it. In the animated series, Lois Lane is a sort of kind of tough on the outside career woman who is annoyed that her big piece exposing a sort of gun running network in Metropolis that was supposed to get the front page has been displaced by a story about some girl who was saved by an angel. The angel's obviously Superman, and it's like, this is a bullshit. Like, she doesn't say bullshit because it's a kid's cartoon, but you get the idea. Like, this is a bullshit, trumped up fluff piece, and it's taking the place of my hard earned story. And she's annoyed about it. And then Clark Kent arrives, who is not doing an especially good job of acting different to Superman. So I don't think that's a great choice. But he comes in, and the boss is like, hey, this is Clark Kent. Why don't you just show him the lay of the land? He's a new reporter. He's from Smallville. And she's like, Smallville, never heard of it. And he's like, oh. Clark goes like, oh, well, have you ever been to Kansas? And she's like, God, no. So she's kind of a snob, elitist, like tough career woman reporter who's like very good at her job, but she's like not very nice. And she's kind of an elitist and a snob. And I'm sure as the show goes on, her more sort of vulnerable side comes out a bit more. But that, like, I thought that was an interesting place to start with Lois in the show. And I like that choice. I like that she's kind of annoyed that like this, what she assumes is a totally fake story about a girl saved by an angel, is taking the place of her hard-earned, gritty crime reporting.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
she's just much more sort of eager, but she doesn't strike me as a very good journalist. Ultimately, like the scenes she has one-on-one interviewing Superman, like there's some fun stuff in there, but I'm like, man, you're not a good journalist at all, actually. I don't just the questions she asks and how she handles herself, and I'm just like, I don't really believe you as a journalist, I'm afraid.
Yeah, she
not as a very
certainly
serious one.
isn't chasing down terrorist cells in the Middle East or anything to
Oh God.
get
Oh
interviews
God.
with the Houthis. Only doing what Luffy would do. Yeah,
I mean, I like Amy Adams, don't get me wrong, but
not that
wasted.
I'm not a yeah.
Wasted in Zack Snyder's Superman stuff. Anyway, so we're introduced. Obviously, he's their new guy here. There's a brief moment like that I quite like at the end of the day when they're leaving the Daily Planet, and she's like, "Oh, how's your first day?" And he's like, "A bit longer hours than I was expecting, but otherwise everyone's been very nice."
Yeah,
I don't know. Like I like the way he plays this a lot.
yeah. I like that. And then like when they get robbed in broad daylight.
Yes, they get robbed in broad daylight. They get dragged into an alley, and he's like, "Oh, we better do as he says, Lois."
Yeah,
Just give him your purse.
Maybe you better. And he catches the bullet, and like it pretends to have fainted. So he's kind of like literally doing everything to convince everyone watching that he is allergic to pussy.
Yeah, like he like, why don't you hand him the purse? And then she drops it, and then ultimately she tries to like, what she do? She tries to like kick him, right?
Yeah,
Like
she
he
tries
reaches
to
down to grab the purse. He tries to kick the gun away. Not a great move, because then the guy reaches like as he's falling back,
he shoots.
He shoots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Superman in a nice, actually quite like the way this plays out. Superman grabs the bullet.
Yeah.
And then he's on the ground
pretending to
and
have
he's like,
fainted.
"Oh, I fainted." And it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like like acting really kind of pathetic that he fainted. And then when she walks away, he smirks to himself like I caught the bullet, I saved her, and she thinks that I'm kind of a pathetic loser who was useless. My cover has not been blown.
That is great. I love that. Little King smirked to the camera with the bullet in his hand is iconic. Yeah, I can see why.
Yeah. It's great. I really like it because I really like the sort of satisfaction he takes and how well he played that. You know what I mean? Like that he saved the day, that disaster was averted and his cover wasn't blown, and like he kept his act up,
Yeah.
and then he smiles with some
Yeah.
satisfaction about that. I like it. Good stuff. I think they do they plan to? Is this where they? Oh, all right.
No,
This is
this
where
is
we get that
he says that
accidentally reveals the X-ray vision, or he
yeah.
almost does.
Yeah, that was really funny. It was just like, is it really worth risking your life over $10, a couple of lipsticks, and that was just like,
Yeah.
how'd you know that?
How did you know the exact contents of my purse? And he's like, "Ha, lucky guess." Ooh. Anyway, gotta go. It's fun. I like
Yeah,
this stuff a lot. I'm back in the movie at this point. This is good stuff. So then we kind of take a little turn here to follow some detectives who are following some guy
Ned
that they've been
Beatty.
tailing.
Yeah,
Ned Beatty, yeah.
the guy
Like
from
they've
the
been.
guy who gets raped in Deliverance. Yeah, they're following that
Oh,
guy.
thank you for reminding me of that.
You're welcome.
Now squeal. Anyway, so they're tailing this guy, and he's like, "Oh, like should we take him in?" It's like, "No, maybe he'll lead us right to the big guy himself, Lex Luthor." So Lex Luthor, we are setting up in this movie to be something of a crime boss that is like that they've been after for a long time, but they're trying to get you know they're picking off lower level guys, but they want to get the big boss, right? They want to catch the big fish. So they're following this guy, they're tailing him, and eventually this takes them down into the subway. I think they're in the equivalent of Penn Station. They get down into the subway. The one guy's running away down the tracks. They're chasing after him. And then Lex Luthor has a button he presses that pushes out like a little
Oh yeah,
nook in
because
the wall,
he
a little
like
nook and cranny, a little alcove, if you will.
yeah, a little alcove, alcoves in the Carnegie Aswick Park. Yeah, no, so like he lets Ned Beatty through the door, and then when the detective comes and like gets stuck there, he pushes the button and it pushes him in front of the train.
Yes.
It's
Very
pretty.
funny that he has like they're like 6 buttons on this little control pad and one of them just does that. That's so funny. That's hysterical that he has a button that just in case this sort of thing happens, he can go, "Oh, nope, you are dead." It's very funny. But of course, the guy they're tailing, he gets killed by a train. Oh no. And they're like, "Oh, now we'll never find Lex Luthor." And then do we introduce Lex Luthor? Is that the next thing
Yeah,
we do? Yes, we do.
yeah, we do. They
And because
comes his little
his little like arm
underground.
candy.
Yeah, his little underground library with him and his arm, his like you said, his arm candy.
Yes, she's like, "That was pretty cruel. That's pretty ruthless that you killed him." And he's like, "Yeah, so what? I'm a villain." Okay, let's talk about Lex Luthor. In this movie, bizarrely, he is a crime boss. He's like the best
I don't.
crimer that
Yeah,
ever lived, and
yeah.
he lives underneath the subway in a weird little underground, like closed down subway station that is now his lair. Um, I don't love this choice.
Yeah, I
I think
don't.
everything about the okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, not a Superman lore expert, but through cultural osmosis, I always assumed Lex Luthor was just like industry tycoon man that had an exceptionally large influence over Metropolis and was involved in nefarious things. Right? Like that's
Yeah,
the basic gist, right? He's a whether he's a tech CEO or sort of like a transportation tycoon, whatever the hell he is, exactly in terms of his business. He helped build Metropolis, and he sort of has an undue influence
he's a
over
little
the
bit like
political.
Kingpin,
Yeah, he's a little like
Like Kingpin,
Kingpin.
but not retarded.
Yeah, he's a little he's a little bit like Bruce Wayne if he was a bad person, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah. Um I don't like what they do with Lex Luthor in this even a little bit. There's not a thing about it I like. First of all, Gene Hackman is great in a lot of movies. He's not very good in this movie as far as I'm concerned. He's just not doing anything interesting. He's doing his Gene Hackman thing, which is he yells at people. Um, there's
yeah,
a like how a lot of actors from this era sometimes they settle into a very stereotypical version of what it is they do. Al Pacino is like the big example that comes to mind. He sort of becomes a parody of himself eventually, or a stereotype of himself. the stereotype of Gene Hackman is that he yells at people the whole movie. Like that's like basic 90% of what he does in the Poseidon Adventure is he just yells the whole time. And like in this movie, I don't really care for anything he's doing. I think it's
That's
kind of a
interesting.
fun quirk that he's wearing weird wigs the whole time, and eventually it's revealed that he's bald.
Yeah,
But
okay, so that part was like kind of like that didn't hit for me very well because like at first I was like, okay, we're doing the thing I guess where he like goes bald from exposure to kryptonite from working with it for so long, I guess. But then at the end he just like pulls the wig off and reveals he's bald. He's like, it's me, huh, Lex Luthor. It's like, the bald guy. It's like, okay. Yeah, I mean, I know he's bald. Yeah, I remember that. Mordaka says that Lex started as a crime boss slash mad scientist for decades. The CEO aspect was added in the 70s. People didn't like it at first and called him Slim Kingpin. That's interesting. I did not know that.
I didn't know that
I
either.
find the CEO like the kind of like cold, calculating CEO villain type a bit more compelling in
I do too,
yeah,
or at least that's my understanding of
more
like.
compelling than
I
what
think
Gene Hackman's doing here, I would say.
yeah, and I think there's something about that that maybe works a little bit better for Superman. At least it seems like there's more narrative potential there because Superman, like the Lex Luthor is something. He's a bit more untouchable. He's a bit more like he has a lot of levers of power and control that allow him because if he's a villain for Superman, who is incredibly like he is almost impervious to damage, has incredible powers. Someone who has a lot of like political and social capital in Metropolis would be a bit more complex to have to deal with, right? I don't know. It just
Yeah.
seems like built into that is something interesting. Though obviously, if he was just a crime boss, mad scientist guy, there's a way to make that work for sure. I just don't think they do it very well in this movie, and I think this ultimately culminates. If his plan was better, if his characterization, his writing was better, I think Gene Hackman's performance would be fine for me. But it's just that ultimately his plan is one of the stupidest I've ever seen. So I'm excited to talk about it. But
Georgius Rex, he has the power to feed Jolly Ranchers to government people.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah. So
ironically though, I think that the Gene Hackman, what Gene Hackman's doing here feels more in line with like the Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor for me than it does with the CEO version. And that was kind
yeah,
of throwing me off a little bit at first because I was like, oh, like I feel like I feel like anything that I might have taken away from this particular performance has been a little bit tarnished by the fact that Jesse Eisenberg came in and did it way worse, like no but I don't know, man, like the yelling, tantrum throwing kind of like I just it just wasn't as interesting to me as as I feel like it would have been if if I like the CEO aspect a lot more just because the sort of corporate power surrounding him and making him untouchable in that way, right? Like
political
Superman,
power too.
yeah,
Yeah,
political power
because
and
he's kind
corporate
of like
power.
I don't know. He's almost a bit more like a Carnegie or someone like that. If he also had like nefarious ulterior schemes, in like a Superman villain might have. But like he's very influential. He helped build the city. He's you know he is I don't like he's very important to the image of the city as well. Like in
Yeah.
the animated series, he's a CEO type, and like Lois is kind of like the one assigned to his beat, generally speaking, because he makes news so frequently that like one reporter is just kind of assigned to cover him all the time. You know what I mean? Like that just seems to fit more. Obviously, if he was just sort of a mad scientist, crime lord guy, there's a way to make that work as well. But I like the CEO thing. I like that he's a man of industry and a man of quite a bit
Yeah.
of political and social power in Metropolis. I think that makes for an interesting villain for Superman.
Yeah, the villainous Bruce Wayne aspect, I think, is a nice foil, and the fact that he has to use indirect methods of like evil scheming because he can't hope to face Superman down on his
Yeah,
own.
and when his evil scheming is more about like his vision of like what he wants to use his power to do, which isn't necessarily strictly villainous.
Yeah,
You
it's
know what I mean?
yeah.
Sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes it gets into that, but like he wants to create he wants power, right? And he wants control over the city. He wants the city to be great and wants to do all these things that he can only really do if he accrues more power to himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So there's something more interesting in that as well.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and as Jay Jameson says, like he's a resentful of Superman because of all the power that he has that he doesn't have himself. Because power is the big thing he wants, right? And like you
Yeah.
can make that work with mad scientists as well. But I like the
Yeah, but like he
CEO
doesn't really even
vision.
do anything particularly mad scientist-y in this one, really.
No,
Like
no,
he's
he
more of
doesn't.
like a
He's an Austin
con
Powers
man.
villain.
Yeah.
He's an Austin Powers villain in this movie, where he's like, "I will be the greatest crime lord the city's ever seen." People
Yeah,
will
like
remember all
one of
the
his big
criming I
plans
did.
involves like setting up a literally a confidence scheme, right? Like running a con where like the military thinks that they hit a woman in or like yeah they hit a woman in a car and he's
Yeah,
the paramedic who has to come by and stall them while Ned Beatty goes in and plugs the different coordinates into the missile. It's
yeah.
like yeah, it's just I don't know, it's a little bit goofy. It's cartoonish, and it just I guess it fits for what they were going for in this movie. But I kind of just like from everything that I am aware of with Lex and Superman, I kind of was hoping for something a little more something with a little more oomph to it. You know, something I could really
Someone
sink
that
my
feels
teeth
like they're
into. Yeah,
more matched to Superman, right?
yeah,
Two comments right in a row. I think both sort of illustrate the narrative potential you have. Dave L says Lex kind of has a point. Lex has earned his power while Superman was born with it, so you can get into the sort of like the difference there and the resentment that a self-made man might have towards someone who was just born with it. You know, like that's really interesting narrative potential. Mordaka says some versions of Lex sell it as Superman makes humanity weaker and reliant. You know, like that's an angle you can take with it
yeah.
as well. Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
I don't mind that.
great.
Georgius Rex mentions that the land scheme that we're going to get into with Lex Luthor in this movie is lifted from Diamonds Are Forever, which is one of the campier Sean Connery Bonds. I mean, it was like right leading up into the point of Roger Moore taking over, where the camp turns up to 11. So yeah, yeah, it's that's funny. I knew I had seen that somewhere before. I had not placed it.
Yeah,
So thank you for that.
yeah. So yeah, we're introduced to Lex. He's got this woman that wears this crazy like arm candy outfit. He's got this weird underground lair in an old subway system, which is a cool location, I guess, for a different character, or for a character with different motives and intent. He has a goon played by Ned Beatty who feels like they tried to roll all of the Three Stooges into one character. Um,
Otis. His name's Otis because
Otis,
Otisburg. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Otisburg.
yeah.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
what do we? Yeah, I feel like
Well,
we
we don't
established a
really
couple more
establish
things
much
here.
in this scene except that he wants to be like the number one crime lord, and nothing can stop him, from succeeding in his evil, nefarious plans.
He's gonna crime like no one's ever crimed before, Hugh.
Yeah. And then I think the next scene, the
We're
next
back at
couple
the
scenes.
Daily Planet.
Yeah. Are we back at back at the Daily Planet? We're not getting into the point where, like, in one night everything starts going absolutely fucking bonkers in
We're not
Metropolis.
there yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet. There's talk about like um
Lex in
there's
the
like a
movies is
story that
essentially an Adam West Batman villain. Yeah, that's spot on. Actually, that's
that's
pretty
how it
much.
feels.
Yeah, it feels very much like that.
Like Saturday morning cartoon show as an insult.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is funny because we've been talking about like a Saturday morning cartoon show that's done it a lot better. But yes, so then he's kind of assigned. He's gonna like he has plans with Lois, but I don't remember what they are. Is it to like cover a story or something like that? Or like he's trying to ask her out or something. I can't remember exactly what they're talking about in this conversation, but it ends with like he's following her and he almost follows her into the bathroom on accident. And he's
Yes,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, whoopsie, my bad." Um, I think there's the implication that they're going to like meet up or something like that, but she's like, "No, I have to go cover a story. I have to go ride in a helicopter to go cover a story that will become important later." Because and then she's on the roof of the Daily Planet. There's a helicopter that's going to come take her to wherever she's going to cover a story. And then, oh no, the helicopter gets like caught on some cables, and then in what can only be described as a freak accident occurs that causes the helicopter to crash.
Like
And then,
violently spin out of control. Yeah, when it's just like, well, it like okay. So what I was thinking when I saw this was like he gets caught on the cables, the pilot does, and then he has to just, I guess, like just be like, oh, huh, that's weird, and then like gun it even harder, like in
yes,
order to cause what ended up happening. Because I'm just like, just land. You're like 3 feet
yeah,
off the ground. Just put it down and see what
yeah.
like you.
Uh, Yeah, it seemed
I
pretty stupid. Little King is right. It does feel like a Final Destination movie for a moment. Um, it's very odd the way it plays out, but a freak accident occurs, leaving the pilot of the helicopter basically incapacitated and the helicopter teetering on the edge of a giant skyscraper. And of course, people on the ground are like, "Oh my god, look at that!" Ah, they're screaming and yelling. Lois is screaming her head off, as you might expect. She's like trying to get. She instead of waiting for help, she like tries to climb out and almost kills
kills
herself.
herself. Yeah, multiple
Yeah,
times. Yeah.
multiple times over. Superman sees this teetering on the edge of the building, and it's a little campy, and I don't love. My only problem with this really is how long he takes, considering the
Well, he's
circumstances.
got to find a rotating door to run into and change his costume real quick, man. Like that's
Yeah,
our iconic moment. He also
well,
has
the
to run
funny,
across the street opening his shirt to reveal the S.
yeah, I like the shot, and I like the goofiness of the going really fast in the revolving door, especially because he almost gets stuck in a revolving door earlier when he's
Yes.
pretending to be an idiot. Um, like, yeah, I get it. I like it. It's fun. But we do learn in this movie that he can change costumes in an instant without actually having to change. He can just go boop, and now he's got his costume on.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
we yeah.
and so he takes a little bit long to do it considering the circumstances. That's my complaint. It's not a
It,
huge deal because ultimately he runs away. He finds a phone booth, but it's not an actual phone booth that can fully close. It's just like a little, it just provides a tiny little bit of shelter. And he sees it and goes like, "That won't do," and keeps walking. And I'm like, it's a funny little joke. It's a funny little gag. He finds a revolving door. He spins around in that, all that sort of stuff. Then he zooms up. He flies. I quite like the way the flying is handled because he always kind of
for the
is
most part.
slow off the
for
ground.
the most part, I like it. I think it gets a little, especially at the end, gets a little wonky. But yeah.
There's some of the ways it's filmed or whatever. It's not ideal, but I like the sort of slow start, especially when he's flying with Lois, because there's a shot in the trailer for the new Superman movie where he's saving someone from being trampled by a giant monster, and so he zips in and grabs them and immediately zooms off, like all in one fluid motion. And this happens. Something very similar happens in Zack Snyder's movie as well. And I'm like, guys, I know this is an over the top comic book movie with like some very campy, unrealistic elements, but that woman is dead. You broke her neck. Like, and I'm sorry, but I just would prefer a movie that took something like that into consideration. I
This
really
one does
would.
do that a little bit. Yeah.
This one does.
Speaking of that, though, real like on a tangent, have you ever seen that YouTube video where somebody analyzes? It's like, can the Flash outrun his own farts? And then the end of
No.
the video is basically like, let's also just talk for a second about how if the Flash ever decided to crop dust someone, he would obliterate people because it would come out of his ass like a shotgun blast.
Yeah. The Flash is an especially tricky one to solve in terms of physics. Yeah, I don't envy anyone who has to try and write for the Flash ultimately. But I like that this movie, like because like him flying is kind of like the way it's framed is sort of like graceful and noble. There's a sort of elegance to the way they're trying to go about it. It is kind of slow off the go, right? He doesn't zip around like a, like a bolt of lightning or whatever. And I think that does help with the scenes where he needs to fly with other people who don't have superpowers and not kill them in the process. So regarding that little shot in the Superman trailer, it is the kind of thing where he needs to zip in super fast, grab her, and then kind of slowly accelerate away. And you can absolutely write it where he does that, and you can film it so that's possible. And it can be just under the wire, but like you can show him taking care to not snap the neck with whiplash and break every bone in the body of the person that he's essentially tackling at full speed. Like I know that we're doing a lot of unrealistic things, but I do think that's the kind of detail you need to get right. Like because it matters, because we all understand how the world works, and we're dealing with people that don't have superpowers. You can't tackle them at full Superman speed. I'm sorry. You can't do that. And like I hate these sort of arguments people will throw out. It's like, well, they'll use this sort of tagline from this movie, like you'll believe a man can fly, but you won't believe that someone can survive being tackled by someone who's flying faster than a speeding bullet. And it's like, yeah, yes, exactly. I do not believe the latter, and I can believe the former based on how the movie's written. Like those details matter.
Internal logic and physics.
Internal
nice.
Consistency.
Internal
yes,
consistency is nice. Yes, I don't have to. I can suspend my disbelief about certain things, and also not about others. That I am capable of.
Especially
doing
when they're consequential like this. And I like the way this movie handles it. Like when he sort of catches her, there's a sort of soft bracing for impact. It's a nice touch. It shows that he cares, right?
Yeah.
And so he flies up and he tackles her. And then he says the famous line. What does he say, Hugh?
He says, "Oh, I got you." And she says, "You got me. Who's got you?"
It's nice.
Yeah,
it's fun.
It's good.
I like it. Good stuff. Classic.
Then the helicopter starts falling, so he grabs that and floats him up to the top of the building. I like his very nonchalant when he puts him down. He's like, next time maybe consider the elevator.
Yes.
He's so
next time maybe
he's so goofy.
And then
and
the other one that I really like, and this really sells me on Christopher Reeve's performance, but like Superman as a character, because especially the way he's portrayed in this, where like earlier when he's not Superman, he's like really hiding his power level, so to speak, and then when he's finally revealing it, he's got kind of like a not cocky, but like confident, very confident, jokey attitude that I like. Where he goes, "I sure hope that this hasn't put you off flying, because statistically, it is still the safest way to travel."
Yeah,
that's so funny.
It's really,
and you
funny.
can tell he like takes some joy in making that joke. You know what I mean? Because he knows it's funny.
Yeah,
and but he's not confident for the sake of being cocky. He's confident for the sake of being reassuring.
Yeah,
and comforting to people, where he's just like, I hope this
he's
doesn't put you
softening
off
the mood,
flying.
and
That's
I
so
love
funny.
that. Like he's
oh, it's so good.
He's got first responder kind of like calm energy.
Yes.
Yes. Like and he's gonna play first responder for the entire goddamn city in this evening, because this is just the beginning of the chaos that is unfolding in Metropolis on this one specific night. So
but it's a great moment. I like he saves her, and then he has his little cheeky joke he makes where it's like, "I hope this hasn't put you off flying." Like, that's funny. He smiles at her and then he flies away.
He goes,
and
I also
like bye. He says bye. He's just so casual about it. He's like, "Bye, see you later." It's so good. I love it. I'm like totally sold. This is Superman for me. This is everything I want it to be. This is great.
Yeah,
this is a perfect little moment. I really like it, where she's overwhelmed by what just happened, the fact that he can fly, all that sort of stuff, and he sort of diffuses the energy with a nice little reassuring joke. I'm like, that's great. That's great. He's very friendly. He's keeping the energy light. I like it. Then he flies away. He's flying away, and he's like, isn't it nice to fly around? He's having a nice time. And then he sees a whole bunch of different things all going wrong at once. It's like we get a little montage. because we haven't really done any of this in the movie in terms of him saving people. We got to do a whole bunch at once, or saving people or stopping crime and various things of that nature. So there is like a literal cat burglar crawling up the side of a building with little
Yeah, oh, yeah,
suction
okay,
cups.
yeah. He's crawling up the side of the building at the start, and we get a nice scene. I do like it where Superman is like standing on the building and looking down at him with like crossed arms, and he freaks out and he falls, and then he goes down and catches him, and he brings him to the cop, right? And when he brings
Yes.
him to the cop, he opens the bag and shows him all the jewels that he already has in his pocket.
Yes.
Why was he climbing up the building?
That is a good question, Hugh. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe this is the second jewelry heist he's done in one night.
The second build. He was
getting
three.
a little greedy. Yeah, he's gonna hit three threes, and going for the hat trick, right?
He's
So.
Lex Luthor. Who?
Yeah, I'll show Metropolis who's the real crime lord here. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why he's doing that, but I do like him standing sideways on the building and being like, "Hey there." Like, that's great. That's a nice little detail.
Guy, like him falling down, and then like he catches him standing on the window and is like, "All right, let's go down now." And then the one guy at his desk turns around and looks and just misses him.
Nah.
And goes, nah, and keeps writing.
There's no way I saw what I just saw. He just says nah to himself. That's pretty funny. Oh, yeah, I totally forgot one of the best lines in the movie. Thank you, Topaz Sutras. The best line in the movie is she says, "Who are you?" And he says, "A friend."
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. That's Superman.
Yep.
It's great. I like the way he doesn't. He's like, I'm not going to sit here and explain all the existential questions about me being an alien with superpowers. He's just like, I'm a friend.
Who are you?
I'm here to help.
Well, I'm the last son of Krypton, which is a planet all the way.
That's a funny. That would be a funny rewrite of that scene for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, he drops the guy off and then he flies away, and the cop's just kind of staring at him, speechless. That's another funny detail.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Yep. And then a shootout. There's an armed shootout happening.
A car chase. Shootout. Yeah.
Yep. And he puts a stop to that. He puts a stop to that too.
Yes.
And then there's a cat stuck in a tree, and a little girl who needs her cat back. So yeah, this scene shocked me.
Before we get to the cat, right? Because there's another fun little detail. So there's guys who like end up on the yacht after they steal whatever they steal. They're counting money as they're going away on the yacht right after the shootout. Superman lands on the boat. One of the goons sneaks up behind him and tries to hit him with a crowbar, and it does nothing, but it goes boy. Like, that's pretty fun. Yeah. That's a fun detail. I like that. And then the cop who was there for the cat burglar, the jewelry thief, he comes in to tell his other cop buddy, like, "Oh my God, you won't believe what I saw. This guy, he flew down," all that sort of stuff. And the other guy's like, "Why don't you go back to Murphy's," or whatever the name of the pub.
Yeah.
And he's like,
"I'll join. My shift's almost up. I'll join you."
My shift's almost up. I'll join you. But he says, like, "Why don't you go back to the pub and finish what you started?"
Yes.
I like that line.
I like the dialogue a lot in this section of the movie.
Yes,
like
this section of the movie, the dialogue's really strong.
It's really snappy.
So now there's a yacht right on the street next to the police station, and then the four criminals are chained to it or tied up to it. Like he just put the yacht in the middle of the street in front of the police station. That's a funny detail.
He's like, I'll get my hat.
And then he comes out, "I'll get my hat." So good. And then he sees him flying off, and then he says, "I'll get my hat." That's a great detail. Then it comes to the cat. Go ahead.
Oh, well, actually, idiot. I don't know how to pronounce that word. Someone in the chats, they say confessions are good for the soul. You might want to talk to this guy with the cat burglar.
Oh yeah,
another really great line.
So many great lines. I don't love bad vibrations.
Like, the bad vibrations one felt very.
It's okay.
Hippie, but
it's unnecessary. I would say. I think the scene works perfectly well without bad vibrations. It's fine. It's not bad. I wouldn't begrudge someone who liked it, but it's not as good as the other ones. I like they say confessions are good for the soul. You might want to talk to this guy. That's a nice little detail too, because it also kind of illustrates his sort of like good old American Christian upbringing as well. You know what I mean? It's sort of like there's not a lot of like God talk in this movie or anything like that, but like in the opening scene well, the big scene that matters with Pa Kent, when they sort of talk about his greater destiny and like everything happening for a reason. It's basically like the implication is very much that like God has a plan for you. They just don't say it explicitly. And then
Yeah.
little lines like this just sort of drive that home, I think. Like they say confessions are good for the soul. You might want to
Yeah,
talk to this
there's like
guy.
an appeal
Good
to
stuff.
there's an appeal to a higher good in humanity that he
Yeah.
clearly believes in, and I think that that's something again that we lose in future adaptations that have come out in our
Oh, we sure do.
Yeah.
We sure do.
Yeah, so then we have the cat scene, the cat in the tree. He comes down and rescues the kitten that's stuck up there. It gives it back to the little girl who runs in to the house, and this part like absolutely shocked me because she basically she runs in and she goes, "Mommy, a man flew down and got Kitty out of the tree for me," and you hear the mom just go, "What did I tell you about lying?" And then you just hear a slap. I was like, what the fuck?
That was very funny. Yeah.
It's crazy. What a wild choice.
What did I tell you about lying? Smacks her in the face. It's like, oh, jeez. Yeah. It is pretty funny. I laughed pretty hard at that.
Yeah, I had a good belly laugh about that one when it happened.
There is
and then Air Force One. The president's airplane, Air Force
Wait, was
One.
it Air Force One?
It is Air Force One.
Detail.
They when the lightning hits the engine and the pilot starts calling in like Mayday, Mayday. This is Air Force One.
Oh, somehow I missed that detail. That's really funny. But he saves the president. That's
so
nice.
He saves in one night. He has stopped an armed robbery, a cat burglar. He's saved Lois Lane and a helicopter. He's saved a cat from a tree and rescued the president of the United States. This is
Hell yeah.
That's beyond hat trick level. Like, that is insane. You really...
And the implication of the movie is that this is basically his first day in Metropolis. This is his first 24 hours. Essentially. I mean, It's his first day at the Daily Planet. We haven't seen him spend any time in Metropolis before. This is within 24 hours. So he's a busy boy. Someone mentioned in the chat, like, something bringing up how in Man of Steel, he's, like, reluctant and like somber about saving people. That's the kind of thing I mean when I say that like Man of Steel is a crime against the American spirit. Like the movie is like so begrudging about having him be heroic, like he doesn't want to be doing it. I'm like, I cannot believe they made that choice. It's just unfathomable to me that you would go in that direction. As opposed to this, which it is piling on a lot in a very short amount of time, kind of an absurd amount of time, I would say. But it's great. I like a lot of this stuff. This is probably the best of the movie. I think easily the best of the movie, as far as I'm concerned. But there is an awareness that they need to have him saving people and doing stuff like that because we haven't had any yet. So we do a ton all in a row. So they can be like, until the finale of the movie, this, you've gotten your fill, essentially.
Yeah, it's all fun stuff. It's like, it does feel like somebody said a little Final Destination-y. Like, clearly Death had it out for Metropolis tonight, and like Superman,
unless these sort of freak accidents and crimes are always, I mean, it is a big city, there's at least one armed robbery most nights, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe
I don't know, I'm not sure.
It was the 70s. Crime was I think there's even an implication in this movie, I can't remember, that like, even Metropolis, or maybe it was the animated series, there's some line that like even Metropolis is feeling the effects of the
one, he says something, it's when Lois kicks the guy and then they get out of the alley. He goes, I know times are tough, but you gotta risk your life for $10 and
yeah. So the implication is that this is one of the nicest cities in the country, but even it is dealing with quite a bit of crime and stuff like that. So he had his hands full. His work cut out for him this very first night. I like that he saves the president. I can't believe I missed that detail. But anyway, the engine fails in the plane, and so he like takes the place of that engine, helps land the plane.
I really like the scene too, where like like a couple of the pilots are looking out the window and they kind of turn around. The guy's like, what happened? Did we get the engine back? He goes, just keep flying. Don't ask. I'm not going to tell you. Just keep going. And then they all turn back to look again, which is really fucking funny.
It is funny.
It's good.
It's quite funny. Then we cut to Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor is hearing about, this guy saving everybody, and he's like, I don't like that because I'm a crime man.
Yeah, what happened? Caped Wonder, Stun City. I wonder what's gonna happen if my plan doesn't go off without a hitch.
Yeah, I just don't like any of these scenes. I mean, I do like that he has a pool built into this like foyer staircase of an old subway station. Like that's a fun detail. Reminds me, I was in oh god, what's the name of the hotel? Anyway, it's in St. Augustine. It was built by Henry Flagler. This super ornate giant hotel for the well-to-do back in the day, and there's like this big ballroom that was turned into like a giant pool. So it's like a giant elegant ballroom filled with water. It was such a crazy look. I'd never seen anything like it, and this kind of feels like that to me. So his little lair is kind of fun. But ultimately he's like, oh no, there's a person stopping crimes. That's bad for me because I want to cause crimes. That's basically the level of dialogue we're talking about for his sequences, and I don't care for it.
He does have that joke where, Otis comes up and puts his robe on. He's just like, Otis, maybe next time wait until I'm out of the water to put my robe on for me.
And then like, Otis looks down on him and goes, like, it's so dumb. It's
really stupid.
It's really stupid.
Look, I'm okay with a little bit of cartoony camp, right? But these scenes really do kind of push it to a level where I'm not sure I'm okay with it going. Yeah. Topaz is like, I like how he's underground because he wants to save money on rent. Yeah, that's funny. That is funny.
Oh, so for the person in the chat, it wasn't the Flagler Inn. It's called the Ponce de Leon Hotel in St. Augustine. If you Google it, you'll be like, holy fuck, that's pretty ornate and awesome looking. Yeah, it is no longer a hotel. It is now Flagler College. But it's a really, really cool hotel that he built in St. Augustine. Anyway, but in there or the one across the street, there's this like giant, elegant ballroom that used to be a pool. It's just such a cool vibe. It's really pretty sweet. Anyway, yes. So Lex Luthor is not happy about Superman because he's a bad guy and Superman is a good guy. And
that's like the extent of that scene right there, right? Because
that is the extent of the scene.
Because then we're back in the Daily Planet office, and Perry White wants the scoop. He wants, why does he wear that suit? What's it made of? Is it made of silk? How does it feel when he flies? Yeah, I love his dialogue too, because it's just like the rambling questions of like, what does he eat for breakfast? What does he, who's he sponsored by? Like all this kind of like all these kinds of like really funny questions that show that he's got like just what it takes to be the the head editor of a newspaper, essentially, asking things that are not what everybody would expect, right? Like
I sent you.
Do you want
me
to put that on screen?
I just want you to put it on screen so people will know what I'm talking about. It's ultimately not important at all. I just think it's neat. This is an image of what the hotel pool was that I was talking about. It just looks like a flooded ballroom. It's pretty hip looking. I like it. So,
all right,
she's going to show that on screen just to humor me.
Well, I'm going to try.
You can do it. I believe in you. I think we have the technology. Yes, so we're in the Daily Planet, and he's like, well, we need to get a report. We need to interview this guy. We need to learn about him and all that sort of fun stuff. And then he does what, what's the name of the main editor guy?
Perry White.
Perry White. Something he does a lot in this movie is he goes like, what are you still standing here for? Like he does it like 3 or 4 times. He's like giving people instructions and commands on what to do. And immediately, as soon as he's done speaking, he goes, now what are you still standing here for? Like you're supposed to run off immediately as soon as I'm done talking. It's just kind of a funny little gag he does a few times.
All All right, there we go.
Is it on screen? Is it on screen for the
It's
fine
on
people
screen
at
for the
home?
people in chat. There it is. That is pretty
Yay!
neat, actually. It's
Yeah,
kind of wild.
it is pretty wild. I thought it was pretty cool. Now it's like, like I said, now it's part of a college down there, but it's a pretty freaking cool building. Anywho,
Lex Luthor could do a
after
lot worse.
Lex Luthor could do a lot worse, yes. So, um, Superman decides he's going to pay Lois Lane a visit at her like shockingly swanky rooftop apartment that she has in Metropolis. Like that's pretty good for a reporter who can't spell. I will just say that. Um, she has a really nice like open terraced like
Yeah, it's like a
apartment
garden, like a rooftop garden with like, yeah,
that looks
it's
like it's
wild,
bigger than
man.
her apartment. Honestly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he
Um,
goes to pay a visit, and he sets up a visit with her, right? Like he sets up the interview, and then he shows up a little bit late, and she's like pouting because he didn't show up exactly when he said. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and she's in like the flowiest. I could
nightgown. Yeah,
that was a nightgown, right? Because like afterwards,
yes.
she's gonna walk out of the door wearing it when she goes out with Clark.
It is a nightgown.
Yeah,
Or like it doesn't really look like an I guess well, okay, I'm looking at it again. It no, that's a nightgown.
yeah. So I guess the implication is she's like so dazed from her adventure with Superman that she just kind of doesn't realize that she's wearing a nightgown when she leaves.
Or is it okay, if I'm looking at it closely, it's on a weird it's riding a weird line between a nightgown and like an evening dress that I can't actually tell which it is personally. But
Yeah. Okay. So this scene, the interview scene between her and Superman. Um,
yes.
how do we feel about the questions that she asks? Because like most
This is
of
what I mean when
yeah,
I say that she is not a good reporter in the slightest.
it feels almost like a teen Vogue piece instead of
It does.
something that you would find on the front page of like the equivalent of this universe's equivalent of the New York Times, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't the Daily Bugle in Spider-Man where it's like a tabloid, like riding the line between
Yes.
tabloid and journalism. This is supposed to be like the newspaper, right? Like for we established this
The
right at the
movie, yeah, the
beginning.
movie at the very beginning establishes this as the sort of journal of repute, and they have a great sterling reputation, like providing the truth and all that sort of stuff. It's very like this is supposed to be the best that a newspaper can be. No, they're
Yeah.
supposed to be a paragon.
Yeah, and so her interview questions are things like she asks about his powers and everything, but she also asks like, "Do you have a girlfriend? Or are you married? Do you have a girlfriend? What color is my underwear?
Yeah, I
Do
heard you
you
have X-ray
like
vision. What
pink?"
color is my underwear? Do you like pink? When he says pink,
Yeah,
she's like, "Do
like at
you
first
like?"
he says, "Oh well, this planter must be lead," and she goes, "Yeah, of course, yeah, it is." Why? He says, "Well, I have trouble seeing through lead," which she publishes. Which you would think that like maybe he would be like, "Hey, maybe I don't know, maybe I don't wanna like tell everybody how to hide from like I don't know." That
There's
just
that.
seems like an
Yeah,
interesting little bit of like it's exposition specifically so that Lex Luthor can read it in the newspaper and then exploit it later. Like
yeah,
that feels a little weird to me, but yeah, like what color? Like, oh, you have X-ray vision. Okay, what color is my underwear? I can't see it. And then she steps back and he goes pink, and then she's like,
yeah.
okay, yeah,
He
yeah. Do
blurts
you
it
like
out.
pink?
Yeah, yeah.
But
I don't. I like him in this scene. I don't really like her in this scene all that much because A, I don't really believe her as a good reporter, and B, I just don't find her in this scene especially charming. I find him charming. Uh, no gay jokes, but I just don't.
that's
Yeah,
why
it
we
just
were
it's
so late. It's not
that's
because
why
of
we're
me.
so
It's
late.
because Jamie likes has a hard on for Christopher Reeve.
um,
A lot of people
yeah,
are
I
also
just
mentioning like who the fuck has a lead planter, right? Like lead for when terracotta and wrought iron just aren't heavy enough. That's a good point that I didn't even think about. Like, would that be something that people owned? Like, that
Yeah, I
just
don't know.
seems kind of clunky to have that in
It
there.
is
It's like, oh, it's a
clunky.
planter made of lead. I can't see through it. Oh man, I hope no supervillains read that and hide a particularly dangerous chemical in their in a lead box later that leads to me being unable to stop something for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty clunky, especially where it's going. But in general, I like the way he handles himself in this scene, except for like the blurting out of the pink. It just feels like it feels like we're doing some like juvenile humor that I just don't know that's in keeping with his sort of paragon of virtue sort of stuff. You know what I mean? It's not the worst thing ever, but the whole like, oh, what color underwear am I wearing? And then he just blurts it out, and she's like, oh, do you like pink? It just feels very young adult fiction, you know, in a as an
Yeah, like
insult.
yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the questions. It didn't feel like the kind of hard hitting like I don't know. It just felt it like Wasserman said. It feels like more of it like an enamored fan than somebody who's actually like trying to interview someone who they're like a person who's just come on, like a famous person who's just come on the scene, right? Or like a superhero,
Yeah,
like. And I get that, right? I get that that's what they're going for because it's it's Clark and Lois, it's Superman and Lois. That's the thing. But I don't know. It like it's not working for me very well. It felt a little uncomfortable for me watching it. I wasn't sold on the entirely on the romance aspect.
yeah. Um, so there's a couple things that are said here that I think are important. So he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have plans this evening?" She's like, "No, no, no, no." Um, and they're like, so sure, can you like you can move?" And he's like, "Just don't fly away, all right?" And yada yada. Don't sorry to drop in on you like this, blah blah blah. There's a nice little bit where she goes to light a cigarette and he says, you really shouldn't smoke, Miss Lane." And she's like, "Don't tell me lung cancer, right?" And then he uses his X-ray vision to be like, "Well, not yet, thank goodness." That's a fun little
Yeah, that's
detail.
not. Yeah, that's pretty good. I did like that.
That's like
I
a
will
use
say.
of the that's a use of the X-ray vision that isn't just kind of a cheap like, oh, like looking under ladies' skirts
Yeah.
and stuff like that joke. You know what I mean? Which I don't really especially care for Superman. Um, but that's a nice little detail. It shows that he cares, right? And that he's a paragon. He's like, you shouldn't smoke, that sort of thing. So she says, let's start with your vital statistics. Are you married? It's just like, really? That's what we're gonna start with, Lois? Come on. Come on. Like I know you have the hots for him, but like can we contain it just a little bit, please? You have a girlfriend, all that sort of stuff. But see again, her sort of immature questioning, I like his answer because he's like, "No, I don't, but if I did, Miss Lane, you'd be the first to know about it." Like, "Ooh, there you go." He's got some lines. I like that.
Yeah.
He handles himself well in this scene, I think. Um because this goes to your point about the revealing that he can't see through lead being a dumb choice. Like if it was a little bit naive and on his part, like fine, you could maybe have him not think that revealing this might actually cause problems for him later when he's trying to fight crime and all that sort of stuff. But there are other little lines in this that reveal that he has thought some of this through because she's like, how old are you? And he says, over 21. And she's like, oh, I get it. You don't know anyone to know how old. Okay. So he's being kind of cryptic about things that could trace back to who he is. So he's trying to protect his identity. But like, I feel like if he's thinking that sort of stuff through, he might be thinking a bit harder about what he reveals in terms of what he's capable of and not capable of. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
In terms
I
of
mean,
like
maybe. I mean, like it could be just
maybe.
like he didn't consider it, right? Like,
Yeah,
but
it's not a huge problem. I don't know. I think I
yeah,
would have preferred it if he was more thoughtful about that sort of thing. Um, he says he's 6'4", all that sort of stuff. And she's like, "Well, I assume then that the rest of your bodily functions are normal." And we're playing with the like, "Oh, what does she mean? Is she talking about his penis?" And it's like, "No, do you eat?" It's like, "Yes, I do when I'm hungry." She's like, "Huh, of course you do." I'm like, "Is any of this useful for your piece, Lois?" Like, come on. Do you have any pertinent questions? Like, to compare this to the scene that was revealed, I think they just dropped the whole scene for the new Superman movie where Lois Lane is like grilling him. And have you seen this clip, Hugh?
Yeah, where he starts screaming at her, as someone in our
Yeah.
chat
See, I
mentioned,
don't
like a
like that.
raging incel.
I don't like that either. I don't like the way he handles himself in that scene. But at least you could say that Lois is acting more like a journalist in that
And yeah,
scene.
in that, yeah, where she's just like, have you ever
Yeah.
considered that, maybe you doing this has farther reaching implications? That
Yeah.
you,
At least she's asking like pertinent, like she's like playing the part of a reporter who's going to grill him on this sort of stuff. And I don't like the way he handles himself in the scene that has been revealed from this new movie. But she seems to be more like a journalist. In this, it's the opposite. She doesn't feel like a journalist at all, but he handles himself well.
yeah.
Um,
Topaz,
we
dude,
do the
I
whole
do
pink
kind of like
underwear thing.
the defense that you're running here. Like he doesn't want people to know his identity from a privacy point of view, but he's not scared of someone coming after him. He's not worried about exposing weaknesses.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see that. I can buy that.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can buy that too. It's mostly how clunkily it's used
yeah.
narratively. The whole lead thing. Um, so what's your
Keep in
background?
mind,
Where do you
she's
hit?
flustered because she's quite aroused.
Well, yes, I know that much. Yes, that much has been made pretty obvious. Um, so what? Where do you hail from? He says, "Well, that's kind of hard to explain. Actually, you see, I'm from from pretty far away, another galaxy, as a matter of fact. I come from a planet called Krypton." And she's like, "Krypton, CRI," and he's like, "No, it's actually KRY." And that is a sort of like that's a spelling joke that works because why would she know how to spell Krypton, right?
Yeah.
And then she immediately, instead of following up on that very interesting line of questioning, goes, "Do you like pink?" It's like, Jesus Christ, Lois, keep it in your pants. Yeah, like he just revealed that he's from outer space, and you just cannot even fathom follow-up questions that would be
Yeah, I mean, even if she
useful or
is quite
relevant.
aroused and interested, right? Like when she says like, so where are you from? Like, where you hail from? And he goes, oh, I'm actually an alien. Like, I feel like that should be the moment where she kind of like snaps out of it a
That
bit and goes,
breaks
wait,
out of it?
what?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Like, not only can you fly and you have X-ray vision and you're hot, but like you're an alien. Like
Yeah,
that should
that
be
should
the
raise more questions.
yeah
That
that
should,
should
if anything, break her out of her, like, teen girl haze that she's in right now. But instead, she just goes right back to, "Do you like pink?" And he says, "I like pink very much, Lois." And then she says, "Why are you here? There must be a reason for you to be here." And he says, "Yes, I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way." They said the thing. Good job. That gets points for me. And so here is why I think every movie since that tries to like skirt around this because they just can't bring themselves to include it is just like admitting defeat, admitting sort of cowardice or stupidity. Because the way it's handled in this movie is like perfectly fine. And like I mentioned before, I really hate this argument about like, oh well, like that worked in the days of old, but now in modern times we can't have him say stuff like that. And it's like this movie handles it quite well because this was the 70s. It's not like the 70s weren't a rather cynical time in America. So he says, "Yes, I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way." And she says, "You're going to end up fighting every elected official in this country." So that's her like cynical line. That's the modern cynicism she has about how corrupt America's become. And he says, "I'm sure you don't really mean that, Lois." There you go. Perfect. Like that's it. Like she gets to say the cynical modern thing about how she doesn't really believe. She kind of believes that the American way has been corrupted, if you will. And he's like, "Oh, you don't really think like the whole notion of the American way is like dead as a concept, do you? Like I'm sure you don't really believe that." So he is the sort of eternal optimist and sort of defender and paragon of those sort of virtues, truth, justice, and obviously American cultural virtues as well. And it's just handled very, very, very well, I would say. We introduce a little bit of the cynicism only for him to be like, "Oh, come on, you don't really believe that." Perfect. It's great. Like anyone who can't bring themselves to include this in the modern world is just a hack, as far as I'm concerned. I have no sympathy for a failure to or unwillingness to include this line in his motto. I have no sympathy for it whatsoever. I think you're just a hack if you can't bring yourself to do it. I think, well, you're either a hack because you can't conceptualize a way of doing it well, or you just fundamentally hate your own country. And I think that's pathetic. So that's my soapbox moment for the stream. I like the way it's handled in this movie a lot.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Wait, did we talk about how this was basically like right immediately after Vietnam? And like it's it's a pretty big bungle if you want to call it that,
Yeah, well, I just mentioned the 70s obviously were a very cynical time.
Yeah.
It's not like they were so much more sort of naive and optimistic in the 1970s than we are today, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Such that this line is acceptable then but wouldn't be now. I just think that's stupid.
Yeah. I think this was one of like movies that is considered like a big turning point, for the I guess the
Star Wars is
national.
probably a big one.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously
Star Wars
that's
was
not
1 year before this, and so like
exactly.
they're
in terms
coming
of it,
back to back here. They're coming pretty quick.
yeah, in terms of because obviously in the late 60s, early 70s, there's a lot more of a sort of grittier, edgier, more cynical type of filmmaking and storytelling happening. A lot of it to very great effect, just telling stories about darker subjects and like more morally gray characters and stuff like that. But it obviously reflected a sort of like tension
Yeah.
in the air, right? And in the culture. And then I think Star Wars was one of the big things that sort of brought back in a big mainstream way a sort of like a more optimistic type of storytelling, right? And I feel like this following on from Star Wars just feels in keeping with that, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like I can't remember. I was listening to a podcast a little while ago that was talking about how 1977 is sort of, if you want to like the cultural beginning of the 80s as a decade, where things kind of come around and become very optimistic, in like over the top, almost cartoonish kind of way in a lot of
As a reaction
yeah,
to
as a
the
reaction
cynicism
to
of the 70s,
everything.
yeah.
I think like what was it, like Love Boat was a big one, a big driving factor in that actually is what they were saying, is like because before that you'll have like Starsky and Hutch, which is surprisingly dark, especially compared
Yeah,
to the Ben Stiller Owen Wilson movie. um
sure. Yeah.
but like
But just
yeah.
thinking about like something like The Conversation versus this in terms of two movies that have Gene Hackman in them, like it could not be more different in terms of
Yeah,
the
tone.
general
Yeah.
ethos. Yeah. When was The Conversation? That was 74, right? Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, there's definitely a turning point there, and I think this is part of the wave pushing back in the other direction to a degree that like kind of goes perhaps too far and sort of births a sort of renaissance of more gritty, harsher edged things in the 90s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a thing that moves in cycles for sure. But in general, I like the optimism of this movie in general. I feel like that's what you want out of Superman in general. And the larger point just being that like this came at a time that was a very cynical, divided, tense political and social atmosphere as well, and managed to be rather hopeful and optimistic. So I just don't have any sympathy for people who can't bring themselves to bring that sort of tone to a movie today.
Yeah. And it's not
Like
like
if they can
it's
do it
not like
then,
this
you can
wasn't a
do it
risk for
now.
them, right? Because this was at this time it was the most expensive movie ever produced. So like this
Oh wow,
needed
was
to
it really?
yeah 55 is the most expensive film made up to that point with a budget of $55 million.
Jesus Christ. That's so cheap. I mean, I'm okay. I'm gonna look up what that is now. You said 55 million?
55 million.
55 million in 1978. That's still that is 271. Okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's $271 million today. I mean, we're still making movies that are like well north of that figure these days because movie budgets have gotten fucking crazy. But
Yeah, but it's a lot of money.
that's expensive.
And
That
that's
is a
just for,
lot of
and
money.
like we got to keep in mind too, that's like the listing for the first one. They greenlit the
Yes.
first and second at the same time.
Yeah. So that was a big risk. It
Yeah.
was for sure.
Made 300. This one made 300 million though, so
Well,
it
there you
turned out
go.
pretty well.
There you go. I think it was it was riding a wave. That's for damn sure. So was that basically the end of the interview scene?
Yeah,
So that
then he takes her for a little. I can show you the world.
oh, because the question turns into like, how fast do you fly? By the way, and it's like, oh, I don't know, really. I've never actually bothered to time myself. And it's like, why don't we find out? And then we do the like, a whole new world scene from Aladdin, where, where they fly above the clouds and all that sort of
And
stuff.
around the Statue of Liberty. So like I was like, did he take her to New York? Is Metropolis and New York the same place? Like
In this
what's
world, Metropolis also has a Statue of Liberty.
Oh, he also. Oh my God, he also flies right past the Twin Towers at one point.
Oh, I missed that.
That was yeah. I was like, oh my God, there's a second Superman.
So they go flying around, and we spend an awful lot of time on them flying around. I mean, I get what we're going for, and it's
Oh my
working
God,
to a
this.
degree.
Okay, Dave L mentioned the spoken language love, the spoken language poem, the "Can You Read My Mind" poem that she does. I hated that.
Oh, I forgot about that. I think I just
I
kind of blocked
really
that
did
out of
not
my
like that.
mind. Yeah, I think I just sort of blocked that out. That's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
terrible
pretty
choice.
bad.
Terrible choice.
Yeah. That's pretty bad. Yeah, I forgot about that. I just remember it going on for too long. I just forgot all the
It's yeah.
details that happened.
Flies past
Hold on.
the World Trade Center. Really crappy poem.
So they're flying from that's a full 6 minutes of the movie
Jesus.
of just of them flying around. That's a long time for how little it's a long time for how little we actually get out of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they don't really talk.
Now he drops her at one point and has to go save her, and
That was really clumsy.
yeah. I don't know,
Will
man.
King says written by the actress. Is that true?
Wow. I mean, if it is,
She should be ashamed of that.
yeah, let's not let her do it again. How
Yeah, no more of that, please. Yeah, that's
six
a long
minutes is
scene,
so
and
long for that.
yeah, and ultimately he comes and drops her off again. That's he probably says something smooth. I don't remember exactly what he says.
Bye.
So then he leaves her out on the terrace. She walks back inside. She's all flushed. And then there's a knock at the door, and she goes to answer it, and it's Clark Kent in Clark Kent attire. Ah, it's so good, and I love the way he plays it because he's like, I was like, "Geez, couldn't you hear me knocking, Lois?"
What do you got? Gummy bears in your ears?
It's like, "Who's that? Your boyfriend?" Yeah, it's really good. Oh God, I'm looking at the transcript now, and I'm seeing the poem, and it's making me cringe out of my skin. I can't believe I blocked that out. I wish I had forgotten it completely. He comes in, he's like, Lois, for goodness sake, didn't you hear me knocking? She's like, uh-huh. Like, Lois, didn't we have a date tonight, remember? She's like, oh, right. It's like, and so she's all distracted by the magical evening that she had with Superman. That she's like, oh, whatever for Clark. She goes to get ready. He is standing there. He takes off his glasses and he stands up straight and transforms into Superman. And is
Yeah.
thinking about revealing himself. Says like, "Hey, there's something I need to talk to you. There's something I need to tell you." And then he decides against it, slumps back down, and puts the glasses back on. It's a
Yeah.
really nice little bit of physical acting from Christopher Reeve. He does an excellent job. Constantly pushing up his glasses on his nose. The general sort of like sheepishness of it. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Good. And that's basically the end of
Yeah,
that
that's
scene
well.
now.
Yeah, that's the end of the scene. Like he says something about like, oh yeah, I had a whole night planned. I was thinking, I don't know. I was thinking we could grab a hamburger. Like okay. That's kind of funny.
He's like designed to, he's like playing it so that he would be so forgettable. It's great. And basically, this is where the movie stops being good. I suppose you could say the movie stops being good when she reads that little poem, but I like the way he handles the immediate aftermath when he's playing it as Clark. But basically, the movie sort of takes a dive off a cliff after this point, as far as I'm concerned. Because then we're back to Lex Luthor,
Well, we're
and we
back.
do a dumb.
Aren't we? Like, oh wait, yeah, that's right. Because she has to publish the story about him,
Mhm.
and he reads the story and learns exactly what he's gonna do. And he finds out that Superman's from Krypton, and then he goes in his library and finds a book that basically like he's like, oh well, if Krypton exploded and it's this many light years away, then some of those bits might have come to us as meteorites. And so then he goes and finds, he's like, oh, look at that. There's a big green meteorite that this person in Ethiopia found. Now, my theory is that if I can get my hands on that, that could probably kill Superman.
And the movie goes, yep, you're
Yep.
right.
Because we all know it's kryptonite. So, yeah, I guess
It's so bad.
that's really
It's
thin.
really bad.
That's really thin. So
And
he
we do a
decides-
dumb like Three Stooges gag where he's up on the ladder on the bookshelf, and then the guy moves the ladder before he gets on it, leaving him hanging up there. It's like, haha, isn't that funny? Didn't you laugh so hard, Hugh? Hugh, didn't you laugh so hard?
Yes. Ha 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 ha.
That's
I
better.
did that. I did exactly that. It sounded exactly like that.
And then the only bit about this scene I like is when his like girlfriend was like, "Now maybe I'm just stupid, but I don't understand this plan at all."
Because that was me right there. That was my
Yeah.
response. I was like, maybe I'm just retarded. But
Yeah.
Lex, you sound like an idiot. This does not make sense.
And he has some cringe line where he was like, what, the magic number is 200. Why? Do you know what's significant about the number 200? And Ned Beatty's like, no. And he's like, it's your weight and it's my IQ. Now, come on, people, think. Like, oh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, that was.
That's pretty embarrassing. That's that's terrible.
Yeah,
So anyway,
that's the plan
his
they
plan-
hatch.
that's the plan they hatched. So now they stage this elaborate scene. Like, so the car accident was staged, right?
Yes.
Like it does so many flips, but he's got a little remote control for it. This whole sequence, Hugh, I just felt like my brain shutting off. So they stage a car accident in front of a military, convoy
that's transporting nukes.
just across the country. Yes. And so they stage this car accident, and then the love interest lady for Lex Luthor like jumps out in front of the car and pretends to be dead on the ground, but she's dressed up like a pinup model. And then the guy's like, "Oh, well, I'm going to have to perform chest compressions and mouth to mouth. Like, everyone turn away.
Everyone gather around first, and then turn around,
Yeah.
turn away, so you don't see
About
what I'm
face,
doing." Like,
yeah.
it would.
It's very juvenile. It's very like dumb, horny joke that I don't know. It doesn't work for me. It's not clever. And it just feels kind of like, what are we doing? Like, did an adult write this? What is happening?
But yeah, and so like the plan, right, is for her to pretend to be out but hot, so that the horny Navy officer, who is the one officer in the Navy who isn't gay, will come in and be so enamored by her that he has everybody turn and look at anything else besides what he's doing to the woman on the ground, while Lex Luthor comes up and pretends to be an EMT, and Ned Beatty sneaks in to sneaks under the truck to reprogram the nuke.
Yes, that is the plan. All because they assume that a meteor that arrived from his exploded planet will definitely have the ability to kill him.
Yeah.
He just assumed that on a whim. Jegson Voorhees says it's a nice subtle bit of tragedy that Superman can't even touch the remnants of his own planet. I think in a better movie, that
Yes.
could be a nice little bit of subtle tragedy if we played into that. Like the only little bit of Krypton that he interacts with happens to be kryptonite, and it causes damage to him. And there's a sort of little tragedy to that. That would be a nice detail. I don't think I would give it credit for like how it's used in a movie like this. You know what I mean? Without sort
Yeah.
of acknowledging that, because there's no reason to think that. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just like it's kind of like giving the movie credit for something it doesn't actually do anything with. But it is a nice thought. Like there's definitely something interesting there that you could do in a better story. I agree.
Yeah. And like, what's okay? So I had to look it up because I'm not super familiar with this. Like, kryptonite is a radioactive material from Krypton that harms and weakens Kryptonians, right? So not
Yes.
only is it just like not just the like, because if it was just the remnants of his planet, that'd be one thing. But it's like it's a radioactive element from the exploded planet that like
Just so
just
happens
so
to have
yeah,
landed
I
on
don't know,
Earth.
yeah. Like I think somebody mentioned that in Smallville, like they show up with the baby, like they're at the same around the same time. It, yeah, it's just because they just sort of describe it in this movie as like, oh, it's just fragments of the planet that came, and like if he touches them, it'll probably either kill or weaken him to the point where I can execute my master plan to turn
I
the San
cannot wait to
Joaquin
talk.
Valley into beachfront property.
I can't wait to talk about this plan. So they do their little, you know, uh, little schemes where they reprogram the nukes. It's all very contrived and silly.
Well, and like
Um,
it does. It also, it's just like, okay, so he plays the role of the EMT who comes to get the lady, and take her away, right? But he sends the guy who he thinks is essentially retarded to do the really difficult part of
yes.
reprogramming a nuclear missile. And then he
And as
has,
someone else
yeah,
mentioned, he's a crime boss, but there's only really three of them
yeah.
in the whole movie, and they have to deal with the entire plan themselves. Yeah,
Yeah, and of course the dumb guy fucks it up. And
of course he does.
yeah, he puts the wrong numbers in. And so they have to go and do it again.
Yeah, very cool. Definitely not time wasty nonsense. Yes. So while that's happening, Lois is on a field report thing where she's driving while also trying to interview someone with a microphone, which I thought was really stupid because she's not looking where she's driving at all. It's pretty bad. But she's interviewing some Native American man about selling his land because this is the story she's covering a lot. Someone's buying up a bunch of land in the middle of the Californian desert, a bunch of land that otherwise has not a lot of value or utility. And so the question is, why is someone doing all that? I think she knows it's LexCorp doing it, but she doesn't really know the why yet, and neither do we. So
Is LexCorp even a thing in
I
this
thought they
movie?
mentioned it. I thought they mentioned it, but I might be hallucinating because I know it's a thing elsewhere. I guess maybe not. I thought there was a mention of Lex Luthor being behind this, like that they knew that or something, but maybe they don't, and I'm just making that up.
Yeah, I don't
Either
remember
way,
that. All I remember is that
okay.
like Perry brings Clark into his office and starts. He's like, "Oh yeah, Lois is out in the Midwest." So are you laughing at the Otisburg, the Chinatown?
Yes.
That's a good one.
Forget it, Jay. This is Otisburg. That's so funny.
That's good.
That's really good.
That's really good.
That's really good because yeah, they are kind of doing a stupid version of Chinatown in this section
Yeah.
of the movie. We'll get into it. So He's buying up a bunch of otherwise worthless land in the middle of the
Yeah,
desert
Jimmy
in
Olsen's
California.
out there with Lois on his first gig. Lois is interviewing that, and Perry wants Clark to take over the Superman story. And in the middle of this, Lex Luthor starts beaming messages directly into Superman's head, because only dogs and Superman can hear this frequency. And he starts, telling him about him being a big evil guy, and he's got the plans. Oh no. The Chinatown, that I've made it about six episodes into that big YouTube documentary about Chris Chan, and I don't like where I don't like where you're going with that, Cecil Lawrence, and the Chinatown. But yeah. Oh, and important to mention that they did reprogram. Oh, wait. Wait, they reprogrammed two different missiles, and the one Otis reprogrammed incorrectly is the one that's going to New Jersey? I thought that they oh shit. Okay, so that's them programming two missiles. One from the army, one from the navy. And they have to do another con man job where Lex Luthor is pretending to be a lost trucker on the road. I thought that was all. I thought that wow, I misunderstood that. Yeah, no, because they just do so. They're reprogramming two missiles, and the one Otis reprograms accidentally is going to New Jersey, and the other one is going to cause the earthquake that will push California into the ocean. Uh, and yeah, um,
So, did we talk about why he's doing this yet?
well, we're about to find it. We might as well get there because Superman gets the
He
message
beams
beamed directly
messages
to his
through dog
ears.
whistles.
Yeah.
He dog whistles to Superman.
And Superman arrives and he reveals that the plot is if he detonates a nuke right on the San Andreas fault, he'll knock the expensive part of California into the ocean. Thus,
Where everyone lives.
where everyone lives, thus turning the farmland in the central valleys of California into beachfront property, and make him super rich because he owns all that land that will soon be like the new Los Angeles.
Yes, that is his plan. And he's like, the thing about real estate is you want to buy when it's cheap and then sell when it's valuable. But the tricky thing is how to know when to sell. It's like, well, what if you artificially create more value in the land that you bought for cheap by nuking the the high value areas in the country with beachfront real estate and everything like that? So it's a nuclear missile, right?
Yeah, it's a
I'm
nuke.
not. It's a nuke, and he's going to detonate it directly on the fault in order to cause a massive earthquake.
He's gonna trigger the big one.
Yes.
He's gonna trigger San Andreas with Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and
Yes.
knock California. So he might have a point. Is what we're getting. He's gonna knock California into the ocean. And
yes,
then,
to Kyle R, who said Dr. Evil tier, that is exactly what this plan is. It is a Dr. Evil plan.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, there's no other way, two ways about it. It's just like, I guess we're just not going to think about how none of that works. I do like Superman saying, like, you're crazy, your plan will never work. And it's like, yeah, no, you're right, Superman.
You're right.
It will never work. But that's his plan. That's his real plan. This is a real plot in the movie, as many of you will no doubt already know. But I could not believe it. My girlfriend was watching part of it with me, and then she went to bed because she was tired. So I paused the movie to go tell her what the actual plan was. Because I'm like, babe, you're not gonna believe this. This is his actual plan in the movie. So that was fun. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it, actually.
Wasn't this also Christopher Walken's plan in A View to a Kill? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Now, the crazy thing is that he's explaining this all to Superman
Well, of course, because he's evil villain and he's monologuing and he's proud of his plan. So
Before he puts the
yes,
kryptonite on him.
yeah, he's
So
not the
like,
smartest
yeah,
one in
like
the bunch.
he is
Yeah,
really, really lucky that like after the one night Superman went around and saved a bunch of people in the city, that he didn't anticipate Superman would just kind of grab him and take him to the police. Because he could have at any time during this
yes, of
conversation,
course.
but instead he like tricks him into opening a lead box full of kryptonite, which incapacitates him
Hmm.
so that he can push him
So that
into
he
a
can be.
pool.
Doesn't he chain him up or
No,
something?
he puts the kryptonite on a chain around his neck and then pushes him into a pool
Okay, right.
because that'll
Yeah,
like,
that's enough.
yeah, I guess it's, yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah, that's his real plan, and of course he monologues at him the whole time because he's just so proud of himself, and he can't let his brilliant evil genius crime villain plan to go unappreciated. Obviously, so he's got to tell the hero when he's still in a position to do something about it. And Superman's like, "You're crazy. This will never work." And it's like, "Oh yeah, well I'm gonna do it anyway." And so, like I said, they do the whole kryptonite thing, pushes into a pool. I like the way Christopher Reeve plays the being weakened by kryptonite thing. I thought he does a perfectly fine job of that. He's thrown into the pool and he's struggling to survive. And meanwhile, Arm Candy lady, I don't know her name, she sees him and is like hesitant to save him, but ultimately does.
Well, the
So good
reason
for
is
her.
because the second, so he's launched two missiles. Lex has one at the Fault and one at New Jersey,
Hoboken, New Jersey. Oh,
Hackensack,
Hackensack.
Hackensack,
Right.
New Jersey, because that way Superman can't go and get both, right? So it's like a even more cartoonish version of the of Lex's plan in Batman v Superman, where like you try to divert his attention so he has to pick one or the other. Um,
Yeah.
so he reveals that the next missile is going to Hackensack, and Arm Candy says, "But wait, my mother lives in Hackensack." And Gene Hackman like looks at his watch and looks back at her and just kind of shakes his head, like, "Nuh-uh, like not for long." And then he just
Yeah.
leaves. Um, so she, of course, decides to save Superman because, and then he promises to save her mother first.
Hmm.
Um, and she gets him out of the pool and saves him. And
So then he goes and flies off. He chases after the missile. He's flying after it. Eventually, I mean, we're seeing all sorts of, because one of the missiles hits the fault line. He is unable to stop it, and it causes all sorts of earthquake-related chaos. And meanwhile, the other missile he grabs and pushes away into space. I don't think we see it explode in space, right? We just see him push it away.
yeah. Well, no, it
Anyway,
doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like he gets it
I
in
don't remember.
space, and that's where it blows up, and then he has to go to like he basically has to let the California one explode, and then fly
Well,
down into the.
there's a series of like people in perilous situations scattered all around California, like the Hoover Dam and the Golden
Yes.
Gate Bridge, like literally all over the place. Um, and so first thing he does after he diverts the first nuke is that he goes to the fault line itself and flies down into the center of the earth where it's like molten and lava and all that sort of stuff, magma, I suppose you would say.
Yeah.
And like what holds it together? He pushes the
He
fault line
pushes it
back
back
together.
up like when they
Yeah.
show the footage, it's like he's like, all right, now this knocked a few rocks out of place, now all I have to do is put them back exactly how they were, and then they were pretty much set. But it doesn't stop the earthquakes.
No, but I guess it does stop the ultimate destruction of the
Yeah, it stops
coastline
California from falling off
going
into
into
the
the sea.
sea,
Sure.
I
Sure.
guess.
That's the movie's logic, so we're going with it. And then he has to go all around California to the very specific earthquake related peril scenes of peril that people have found themselves in. Um I love the implication of this because it implies that like in California there are 6 or 7 different problems that Superman can go fix instead of like hundreds of thousands of them. So that's kind of funny. But he does go all over the place. He goes, it's him saving people and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
he
But the Golden
stops a
Grape,
school bus. He stops a school bus from falling off the Golden Gate Bridge. But
yes,
maybe he
he
should have
stopped
let
the
them die. Who knows? To keep his secret. Um,
he stops a train from derailing somewhere in the middle of the desert by like becoming the tracks.
yeah. Yes.
He stops like a electrical plant. Oh, this is the Hoover Dam. Eventually, we get to the Hoover Dam where he manages to save some people who are being killed by like the power plant part of it exploding. Ultimately, he is not able to save the Hoover Dam from exploding, but he does save Jimmy Olsen from falling off the top of it. Meanwhile, Lois is driving her car as this earthquake is happening, kind of falls into a crack in the
Well,
earth.
because it's run
Her
out
car
of
does.
gas because the gas station was destroyed by the earthquake completely. It just
It
exploded.
blowed up.
It
It got
blowed
blowed
up,
up.
and so she had to keep driving. And now she's angry that her car is out of gas, and she's screaming at it for that. But then the earthquake starts happening, and her car ends up,
Swallows her up.
yeah, in a
Yeah.
sinkhole, and like she's getting buried alive.
Meanwhile, Superman is still dealing with other more consequential problems. He because the Hoover Dam has exploded and water is going to flood the valley down below. So he pushes a whole bunch of rocks off a cliff to form something of a little bit of a barrier to stop or at least to lessen the massive flood that's coming. And then he finally is able to go help Lois, but ultimately, oh no, he is too late and Lois is deceased. Superman is sad. He is angry that he was not able to save her. So
Damn,
what does
what a
he do,
call!
Q?
What a callback to that moment. All these powers, and I couldn't save my dad. Man, what an emotional beat. This is a hard hitting one. Oh man, I was really invested in that poem. I'm glad. I'm so sad she's not gonna read any more of those in the sequel. Wait a minute, what's
Yeah.
he doing? He's getting angry and flying around the earth so fast.
Well, wait. Let's not zoom ahead, Hugh. He flies out into space and he yells and screams and does everything short of cursing God for allowing this to happen. He's very angry. And then he hears two disembodied voices. One of Jor-El saying, now, Superman, remember, you can't interfere in human history. Don't do it. Remember, I said that at the beginning. And then Pa Kent is like, you have a destiny that is far greater. You were sent here for a greater purpose. And then he's like, I know what I'll do. What does he do, Hugh? Tell the fine people at home.
He flies around the earth so fast that he reverses the orbit, which reverses time.
Uh-huh.
So he rewinds the clock to give himself a second chance to go and save Lois. And then so once he goes back enough, then he starts flying back around the other way to set Earth's orbit correct.
And this time he comes
And
directly
this
to
time
Lois.
he goes straight to Lois. We have to just assume that he did all those other things eventually.
No, I'm afraid we can't, Hugh. I'm afraid what we have to conclude is he decided ultimately that this was more important than some of the other savings he had to do.
Okay, real quick. Cecil Lawrenson says he flies back in time. He does not reverse the orbit. They show the
Yes, he
orbit
does.
reversing. Yes, he does.
Well, not the orbit, sorry, the rotation.
The rotation of the Earth. The rotation on its axis, not the orbit. Sorry. He reverses the rotation of Earth on its axis backwards.
So
then
here's the thing.
goes-
That would happen if time was reversing, but the implication is that is the cause. The way the movie plays it is if he goes so fast that it actually physically causes time to move backwards, including the Earth spinning.
That's got it. That's what it's implying. Like I just assumed that he was turning it around. All right, that's my bad, Cecil. I apologize. Yeah.
Well, you'd be forgiven for thinking that because the way it's presented looks like spinning the Earth the opposite direction causes time to go backwards. Like, I mean, that it's kind of a reasonable.
They show the rotation going backwards because he's going back in time. It's not that is not the cause. I get it. I get it. Thank you for explaining this to me.
But still, but that excuses almost none of it because he just goes so fast that he just goes back in time. I'm sorry, no. I'm sorry, that's not how any of this works.
Doesn't it show him flying back around the other way to start it up again, though?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
See,
So wait,
that's the
wait, hold
reason
on, wait.
I'm
That's why I think that it is implying that that turned the clock.
listen,
Okay.
listen. Here are the two possibilities. Let's lay them out, right? Possibility number one, neither work, but let's lay them both out. Possibility number one is that he is just going so super fast that he goes back in time. We see the Earth stop and then reverse because
It's from his
uh,
point of view as he's doing it.
from
Yeah.
his point of view, quote unquote. And then ultimately it starts going in the right direction again because time has started again from his point of view. Option number two, and it is reasonable to conclude based on how we see it happen, that him spinning so fast that it causes the earth to rotate backwards is actually what causes time to move backwards. And ultimately, once he rewinds the earth enough, he has to get it spinning in the right direction again in order, because it does look like him spinning causes the earth to rotate. And so why, if he's just going really fast and causing time to move backwards from his point of view, why would he need to get the earth started in the right direction again?
Yeah, okay. That's where I got confused, is at the point where he starts it back up. Is
Yeah,
why.
he has to get it going in the right direction because otherwise,
Because like
it looks
otherwise
like
you
it
could
would
just show it stop and then it starts going in the right direction again on its own.
yes. So there's that question. Ultimately, I think to be charitable, you have to just assume.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the best case
Okay.
scenario, it's just all from his point of view, right? That he goes really fast, that causes him to go back in time. That's not how that works, but fine. It's also kind of a cheap, lazy cop out in terms of writing. But the other implication, unfortunately, because if he just rewinds time, then that means instead of the time he took saving people all around California, preventing the flood from killing all the people in the valley below the Hoover Dam, preventing that school bus from going over the edge of the cliff, we don't see him do any of that faster and more efficiently or anything. I think the only reasonable thing to conclude is that he decided to not do one or some of those things and instead to go save Lois. I don't think that's great. I don't think that's a great choice. Um, yeah, and it kind of undermines any emotional weight that her death might have had, and it's really cheap and it's lazy and it's confusing in the way it's presented in terms of what the movie thinks the cause of rewinding time is. Um, it's
not,
one of
yeah.
it's
It's
one of the
pretty bad.
stupidest things I've ever seen in a movie. It's really, really stupid. It's funny stupid. It doesn't make me angry, but it is really stupid.
Yeah, people are pointing out too, like if like he could have probably also gone back in time far enough to just stop the second missile from hitting in the first place.
Yeah, you think? You
And
think he
that,
could have done
but
that?
then he
Yeah.
doesn't have a chance to save Lois. So
He's got to save. You've already saved Lois. You don't need to do it again. You could just not cause her to be in danger in the first place by rewinding before the nukes go off. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. It's pretty bad. It's really bad,
dumb.
actually.
It's a really dumb ending.
If I were very, very emotionally invested in this movie, I think I would hate that ending. But because it's mostly been because everything Lex Luthor has done has been really stupid and campy and dumb. I'm sort of tuned out by the time this happens. I was just kind of amazed. I couldn't believe they actually did that. I knew it was going to happen.
I thought that, so
but
I knew
didn't
it
know.
was going to happen because I've seen the meme, like I've seen a lot of memes
Yes,
and a lot of
exactly.
references to this, right? Like there's an American Dad episode where like they reference this where Stan does it and it like turns back time, and then it turns out that he like got so angry that he popped a blood vessel and fell down and hit his head on the kitchen table and he just hallucinated it. He's like, I'm pretty sure I turned back time. Like I knew it was coming because of that. But I thought it was. I didn't think that was the ending of the first movie. I was like, "Oh, that's got to be something they pull out for the
Yes.
second, right? Like they're gonna pull that
Second or
time travel thing
third,
out for the
they
second or
jump
third
the
movie,
shark.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, no.
Yep. I
This
thought the
is
same
the
thing.
ending of the first movie. It's wild.
It's wild. It's one of the dumbest things in movie history, memed on for a reason. Very funny. Very funny that they did that. But then he saves the day and presumably didn't save some unnamed people that aren't named Lois, but we don't see that part. We don't talk about it. Shh, don't worry about it. Um, and so then he saves the day. He flies back, and what do you know? He's taken Lex and the one goon he has to prison, and he's like, "Here you go, arrest these men.
And this is where
They're
he does the
behind
thing. He's
this."
like, "I'm Lex Luthor. Huh? Look at that. It's me, the bald guy. Don't you recognize me?"
Yes,
Pulls
I'm
the wig
bald.
off.
I've been bald this whole time, and you didn't even know it. Yes.
Yeah. The world is safe now, Superman, thanks to you. Like, yeah. Could
So I
wait,
think
could be
I want to
safer.
read the exact lines because it's fun. He says, "Good evening, Warden. These two men should be safe here until they can get a fair trial." And I'm like, "Who is it?" And he's like, "Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time. Of our time," he says. He says it twice because it's funny. I hereby serve notice that these walls here. And he's like, "Will you shut up, please?" Like they get into an argument like with his dumb goon, and he's like, "All right, take him away, boys." And they call each other nitwits, and nincompoops. It feels very much influenced by the Three Stooges to me.
Wait,
The
yeah, or like
inclusion
the
of
Adam West Batman show.
yes, this country is safe again, Superman, thanks to you. He says, "No, sir, don't thank me, Warden. We're all part of the same team." Da, 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 and then he flies away. And
That's the end of the movie, right?
that's the end of the
That's the end of the
movie.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all part of the same team. Then he flies away in space, looks out at space, smiles, and then flies off screen.
But
Cue the main
where's the
title
after the
theme.
credits sequence with Zod escaping from the Phantom Zones?
No, we're not going to do that for like another what, like 30 years, 20 years maybe.
What's the first? What's the first? What is it? Iron Man? That's like the first, like after the credits thing to tease the sequel.
I thought it was the Incredible Hulk. Don't they tease Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, or am I mixing the
Iron
two up?
Man. Well, yeah, they no. Iron Man came first, and then Nick Fury shows up and says, "We're putting together a team."
Right.
And then at the end of Incredible Hulk, Iron Man shows up and says, "Hey, we're putting together a team." And that's yeah. So Iron Man. Iron Man's the first superhero movie to do shit like that.
Wait. Okay, so I googled this. Now, granted, this is the Google AI overview, so it might be a lie, but someone in the chat might know. It says the first superhero movie to feature a post-credits scene was X-Men: The Last Stand in 2006,
Oh,
which included a scene
fuck.
teasing the survival of Professor X.
Oh, I forgot about that. I blocked that one out of my. I blocked that one out of my memory. That movie was one of my first experiences with true heartbreak as a child.
Wait, hold on. So now I'm on a Wikipedia article called Mid-Credits and Post-Credit Scenes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it says the first post-credit scene involving Marvel Comics characters occurred prior to the MCU in the 2003 film Daredevil by showing the previously defeated villain Bullseye in a hospital bed, managing to impale a fly with a syringe. I remember that. Apparently that was the first
I don't
one.
remember. I don't remember that. I don't remember ever watching that movie actually.
Oh, you didn't watch the 2003
The
Daredevil
Ben Affleck
movie?
Daredevil.
Yeah.
I don't. No, I think I did.
Oh,
I
you
just don't
missed out.
remember it very well.
That was an experience. Yes. So apparently that's the first one. Allegedly, supposedly.
That's right. Yeah, Professor X inhabits a brain dead patient at the end of X-Men 3. He takes over the body of a guy.
Yep. So that's around when that started. So
X-Men 3 didn't get a sequel, but it did get a prequel. X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah, I remember Colin Farrell's Bullseye hitting, waking up in the hospital and hitting a fly with a syringe because it was buzzing around, annoying him. Yep, that movie was an experience. Evanescence, bring me to life. What a time! What a time in movie history. Anyway, so yeah, no post credit scene in this movie.
Yeah,
for better
Zod will escape
worse.
from the Phantom Zone in Superman 2, 1978, featuring Terrence Stamp and Christopher Reeve. Thank you, Cecil.
And that's Superman. It's not a great movie at all, unfortunately, but There's some really good stuff in it, and almost all of it is in that like there's
The midway point, yeah.
the midway point, and there's the scene with him and his dad, with Pa Kent. That little conversation and the way he dies, that's a decent little scene. It's a decent little 5 minutes of the movie. And then the middle chunk where he's first arriving in Metropolis at the Daily Planet, and we see him saving people that in a pretty busy opening night, first night in Metropolis. That sequence is all really good. And then when it comes back time for Lex Luthor to be like, you know what, here's my big villain plan for the movie, it's like, oh, okay. And then it kind of sucks again. And the ending is it's terrible. There's no other way to put it. The ending's terrible. It's got its charms for sure.
But a lot of its charms for me is very much in Christopher Reeve's performance. I think he's a fantastic Superman. And I certainly hope that James Gunn manages to impart some of that to his new guy. But given the way the trailer went, I'm not hopeful.
Yeah,
really not.
I'm really not hopeful either. But we'll see. I'd like it to be good. Matthew Leach, thank you very much for the super chat. Says, have you seen Warfare and what are your thoughts on it? Hugh has not seen it yet, right?
No, I have not, but
I have. I have.
And we will be covering it at some point, right? That was...
Yeah, I think so. You should watch it and let me know. Okay. I don't want to say too much about it because Hugh is right here and he has not seen it yet. But I thought it was pretty good. It was certainly better written than 28 years later was. So it is by default the best Alex Garland thing since Ex Machina, for sure. How much involvement he had in it is ultimately kind of an open question because it is obviously co-written and co-directed by a guy named Ray Mendoza, who is a stunt performer and former Iraqi military vet, or like American military vet from the war in Iraq, I should say. And so it's based on his experience there. And so obviously a lot of the story is coming from him. It is a very sort of grounded, technical, procedural type of movie where you just watch people in a situation, you know, and their strategy and their tactics and sort of how they're trying to survive the situation. I think ultimately it's maybe a little bit forgettable of a movie because it doesn't really hit on anything super deep for me. But I do think it is probably one of the better movies to come out this year so far. And I highly recommend you check it out if you like action, intense, you know, war stuff. Is it the best war movie ever made? Certainly not. But it is certainly a lot better than most things that have come out this year. So, yeah, check it out. It's got some really neat stuff in it for sure. I think if you like the sort of really procedural, like watching people do stuff in military strategy and tactics and things like that, I think you'll find it interesting. It's well directed. It's well shot. It's got some really interesting sound design. I really respect that the movie doesn't have any score in it at all. So they have to do a lot with sound design to carry the movie and just sort of the diegetic sounds of the place and all the action and stuff like that. I thought it was pretty well handled, pretty well directed. So I recommend you check it out. That's my thoughts on Warfare.
All right. Well, we will certainly. I certainly will do that, and I'll let you know if I want to schedule a stream for that.
Yeah, if you nice. You should check it out. I think anyone listening right now should probably check it out as well. There, it is kind of an open question for me whether there's enough to talk about for a whole stream. Okay. But we'll talk about it. Well, you'll see it, and you can let me know whether you think it can carry a whole stream or not. But thank you very much for joining us for Superman. This is sort of, I guess you could say, part one of our July 4th celebration. Talking about truth, justice, and the American way today, and then something more explicitly American and patriotic. Next week, we're going to be covering HBO's John Adams miniseries starring Paul Giamatti, based on a rather famous and well-reviewed biography of John Adams, sort of covering the American Revolution and that sort of era in history, of which I think there are not enough good movies. So I'm excited to talk about something covering that sort of period in American history. So yeah, you have until next Sunday to watch all 7 or 8 episodes. 7. of the John Adams miniseries on HBO. I've heard very good things about it. I'm very excited to talk about that.
I have
next
seen the
week.
first 2 episodes. Prior to this, I'm going to rewatch them because it's been a while. But I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I'm not sure why I never continued it.
Yeah. It's been on my list for a long time, so I'm excited to talk about it. And the 4th of July seems like a good excuse to talk about it
Yeah, man.
on the channel. So we're going to do that. That'll be our celebration for 4th of July on the 6th of July. So we will see you then for that. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you then. Hope you do something fun with your family on the 4th of July. Or if you're not from this country, I hope you just have a nice Friday.
Nice, yeah. a nice non-holiday for you.
Yes. Unless you had any other closing thoughts on Superman, I think we'll end it there.
No, I'm good.
Not doing Independence Day, the movie on the 4th of July. I wanted to do something actually
more
sort of historical.
and historical.
More explicitly historical. Yeah, there's a lot of things you could have done for 4th of July. We could have talked about Jaws. Obviously, that's a set in and around the 4th of July. But I wanted to do something American and explicitly sort of pro-American. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about John Adams, the miniseries. Be there or be square. And do the no Donner cut before the new Superman is out? No, we don't really plan to cover the rest of these Christopher Reeve superhero movies because my understanding is they don't get any better. And unfortunately, I didn't love this movie, so we probably won't do that. I don't know if we'll end up talking about the new Superman. I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we kind of have set ourselves up for it. I mean, I'm definitely going to see it because my girlfriend's father is a huge. He's a very big Superman guy, and he's very excited for it. But he's a big Superman guy who loved Man of Steel, so I'm not really sure what he's in it for.
It is the 50th anniversary of Jaws. You're right.
It is.
I
was actually going to say the beer that Quint drinks on the boat, Narragansett, basically the New England version of Natty Boh. They released a special branded tie-in with Jaws for the 50th anniversary, where they redid the cans to make them look like they did back in the 1970s, and in some of those boxes there are special cans with sharks on them. And if you find one of those cans, you get entered for a opportunity to win a all-expenses-paid trip to Martha's Vineyard. And so I have bought a lot of Narragansett beer in the past couple of days. My fridge is full of that shit. Is
it good? Is it good beer?
It's fine. It's like your typical American can lager, you know?
Yeah.
Sure. It's all right. I had one after mowing the lawn this morning, and it was A-okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, I am committed to the covering, the John Adams miniseries, get a little American history, American Revolution stuff in particular for 4th of July. Maybe we can cover Jaws after that. It won't be on the 4th of July, but it is the 50th anniversary. And that's a big deal.
I'm not going to complain about covering Jaws. I fucking love that movie.
Yes, it is. Jaws is an excellent movie. So maybe we will the week after that. No promises right now, but Jaws deserves it. So maybe we'll find a time to do that. Yeah. So
right. Well, that's all, folks.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you all for the fine comments and contributions in chat. We certainly appreciate it. And for the super chats, we very much appreciate those. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Toodaloo. Bon voyage. Arrivederci.